Chapter 71, Trap. Chapter 71. Trap. The atmosphere was forbidding. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. With his hands on the chair handles for support, Shi Hongxian reacted quickly in this heart-stopping atmosphere and said, obscuring truths with falsehoods, "You are throwing out misleading traps again. Shen Zichuan, do you really think I won't dare to kill you? The blade is already on my neck." Shen Zichuan turned his head to look askance at the blade. "You can just give the command to take down my head." Shi Hongxian did not dare to let up even the slightest. In this confrontation, he was not willing to miss any of the subtleties in Shen Zichuan's expression. Although he was sitting tight in the chair, he was even more anxious than Shen Zichuan deep down. Yet, the more he warned himself not to be influenced by Shen Zichuan, the more he would be spurred on by the expression in Shen Zichuan's eyes and by his tone. "For what it's worth, we are brothers," Shi Hongxian said with a superficial, insincere smile. "Lanzhao, tell me the truth, and I'll leave your corpse in one piece. Much ado about nothing. Feel free to do it." Shen Zichuan egged him on. "Come on." Shi Hongxian's fingers dug tightly into the chair handles as he exchanged stares with Shen Zichuan. But Shen Zichuan was too calm and composed. Thus, Shi Hongxian said, "Aren't you worried about Qi Huilian at all? Once you're dead, I'll skin that old dog and sell him out to the Empress Dowager to plead for leniency." Shen Zichuan said, "If you handed Qi Huilian to the Empress Dowager 20 years earlier, she might really pardon you for your negligence this time. But Qi Huilian is now worthless. He's not worth alive, and he's worth nothing dead. You are a veteran merchant. Would you feel at ease to do such a losing deal? I think you're lost your mind and gone silly from the illness. Qi Huilian is merely feigning insanity," Shi Hongxian said. "Do you think I can't tell? To survive, he tucks his tail between his legs and struggles on whilst at death's door. That's quite the convincing act he has put on." Shen Zichuan sneered. "Are you trying to sound me out at this point in time? He's just a lunatic." "If he is a lunatic, then who are you studying under?" Shi Hongxian stretched his neck out. "Zhao Zui Temple made you a new person. How did that last remaining survivor of the Shin clan, who was so much like a lapdog 6 years ago, become so gutsy and resourceful, huh? Lanzhao, you tell me." "Man proposes, heaven disposes." Shen Zichuan's expression was gloomy. "Don't you know what it's like to be a lapdog at others' beck and call and have them kick you around? If I don't shed my skin, how can I break out of the hardships and make it out there? It's better to rely on oneself than on others. You and I are both fleeing for our lives from perilous circumstances, and yet we are now in internal strife. Shi Hongxian, you sure are doing a good job getting rid of someone as soon as he outlives his usefulness, much like killing the donkey the moment it leaves the millstone. If you hadn't leaked the news, then how would Ohua Pavilion collapsed for no reason? We call ourselves brothers on the inside, but the moment you step out, you backstab me in the back. I can't be compared to you when it comes to being ruthless. But as fate would have it, I didn't die," Shi Hongxian said in a chilling voice. "You want to ingratiate yourselves with both parties, but there's no such thing as having your cake and eating it too, is there? What can Shower give me that is worthy enough of raising your suspicions to such an extent?" Shen Zichuan said sarcastically. "He's not Shao Jiming. He can't be the Prince of Libei, nor can he command the Libei's armored cavalry. He's merely a trapped beast in this kudu. What's the difference between him and me? Whatever it is that he has, I have no lack of it either. He has a good life that you don't have," Shi Hongxian said. "He's the second son of the Prince of Libei, a legitimate lawful son from the direct line of descendants, born of the same mother who birthed Shao Jiming. Even if he can't inherit the title and position of the Prince of Libei, he has tens of thousands of willing troops at his disposal. Aren't soldiers precisely what you're lacking?" With an indifferent expression, Shen Zichuan said, "I hold a post in the Imperial bodyguards. Why would I need troops for? It's only in Kudu that I have a way to survive. Leave Kudu, and there is nowhere else I can put my abilities to use. I'm the 8th common son of Shinwei, while you are the 2nd lawful son of the Shi clan. Have you and I ever had an easy time before? This shows that there's no difference between the sons of lawful or common rank. When it comes to people, even heaven cannot reach a final verdict until the very end. By speaking such treacherous words, you have already regarded the societal order of this world as nothing. Shi Hongxian raised his finger and pointed to his own toe. But you got to admit that some people are born to be masters, as the continual successions of the upper echelons of the noble clans keep it going. This is fate. If there is no difference between those of common birth and lawful birth, then how can the bloodline maintain its legitimacy? He who is surnamed Li is just simply a cut above you with the surname Shen. Shen Zichuan stared at Shi Hongxian and roared with laughter. Insanity stirred once again in those expressive eyes as he said, that's right. When Qiao Tianya saw the upsurge of Shen Zichuan's murderous intent in this split second, he almost thought that Shen Zichuan was going to draw his blade. He did not expect Shen Zichuan to say next in a genial tone, if that's the case, then what future can I have by following Shao? If you believe the rumors and lay a trap to kill me today, then you will come to regret it someday in the future. Shi Hongxian faltered, besieged by doubts and unable to come to a decision, but his expression betrayed nothing. He merely lowered his eyes and said, even when faced with imminent death, you're still putting on an act. You came here as soon as you left Zhao Zui Temple. Isn't that proof enough that this place is important to you? Of course. Shen Zichuan's emotions seemed to have sunk into a deep pool of waters, where there was not even a trace of a ripple to be seen. He said, that is Qi Huilian you're talking about. Even though he has gone crazy, he is also the Qi Huilian who used to be the Triple Yuan top scholar, one which the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace personally invited to take on a leading official post. Now that he's in my hands, I'll never hand him over to anyone else unless he's dead. Shen Zichuan was right in his presumption that Shi Hongxian was setting up a trap to deceive him. Shi Hongxian had no idea at all if Qi Huilian was insane for real or just putting on an act. He merely wanted to preempt and catch Shen Zichuan off guard. Although Shi Hongxian did not have Xue Xiujua's capability, he had an ability one would find hard to surpass, and that was eloquence. The reason he was able to incite the Imperial College to rise in rebellion with just a single tea-house meeting was all because of his glib tongue. And this also happened to be his weak point. If he was really certain that Shen Zichuan and Shao Qie were setting up a trap to screw him over, then he would not give Shen Zichuan the chance to open his mouth. He dragged his sickly body here, because he could not be sure if Shen Zichuan was collaborating with Shao Qie. That was why he had to bring out his own special skill and engaged in a battle of words to trick Shen Zichuan into telling the truth. What do you want Qi Huilian for? Shi Hongxian asked with dread and fear. Shen Zichuan suddenly hit upon an idea. Going along with it, he bent over and said to Shi Hongxian, Qi Huilian was the Crown Prince's teacher. There was the incident at the Eastern Palace back then, and I heard that there was an imperial grandson still in his infancy. Ji Lei did not reveal the imperial grandson's whereabouts to me before his death. I was afraid Qi Huilian knew, so I had to keep a close watch on him. Shi Hongxuan's countenance changed in spite of himself. He said, the Empress Dowager will never leave any survivors behind. It's common practice to stamp out trouble at its source. So what are you daydreaming about? Shen Zichuan said, if there is no imperial heir in hand, who would dare to conspire to murder His Majesty? There will be nobody else with the surname Li in Dazhou if he dies. You aren't the one who did it, and it isn't me either. Instead of falling out with me here, why not put down your blade and discuss a countermeasure with me? How would I know that it's not you? Shi Hongxian did not move. No one but you know the structure of Ohua Pavilion best. It's simply too convenient for you to tamper with it. In addition, I keep encountering calamities one after another, yet you keep getting promoted again and again. Your meritorious deeds sure have grown. I have only just gotten into His Majesty's good graces. It's just the time for me to build up my strength and climb my way up. So why would I kill him? What's more, you and I have been conspiring together for quite some time, so why would Shower believe me based on some empty promises? Shen Zichuan gradually let out a smile at him. Even if I kill you, it should be at a time when there's much more in it for me. The way he said it was half in jest, but it made the blood of those listening run cold. Shi Hongxian covered his lips and coughed, using this interval to evade Shen Zichuan's gaze. Although they had conspired together to kill off many people, Shi Hongxian still could not confront Shen Zichuan head-on. This was not a momentary fear, but fear accumulated over their course of acquaintanceship. He could not forget the way Ji Lei looked with his skin flayed. That was why he wanted to act quickly now that his suspicions were aroused. This man cannot live, Shi Hongxian thought. Once the time was right, he had to kill him off no matter what. Such a man would certainly not let himself be used for Shi Hongxuan's own purposes. His talk about there being no differences between those of lawful and common birth had already revealed his lack of respect and reverence for the 8 great clans. Everyone was attempting the impossible that ran against the interests of their opponents, much like bargaining with a tiger for its hide. And what they were competing against was who would be faster in the days to come. Shi Hongxian secretly made up his mind. He smiled too and said, "I'm scaring you only because I myself was scared after being crushed in that pit. Lanzhou, you'll surely understand if you were the one lying in there. What are you people standing around there for? Put away your blades. Don't hurt His Excellency the Judge." The surrounding blades returned to their sheaths, one after another. But Shi Hongxian did not tell his men to withdraw from the room. Pulling at his fox fur, he said, "Everything happened too suddenly these few days. With our communications cut off, it's inevitable that we would come to be mutually suspicious of one another. It's all good now that we've cleared the air. Come, Lanzhou. Take your seat and we'll talk." Shen Zichuan said, "Blades and swords have no eyes. Second young master, next time, give me a warning first so that I can prepare for it and won't be as in such haste as I am today. It's remarkable how you remain composed in the face of danger." Shi Hongxian lifted the teapot to infuse tea. "As you know, what we are doing can cost us our heads. I was really forced into a corner this time, otherwise how would I treat you in such a way? It's all because I was forced to. I got anxious seeing how Shao II is going to be as pleased as Punch riding the crest of success soon. Come, take a seat quickly. Still holding it against me? I, with the surname Shen, am unworthy of being in high position." Shen Zichuan sized up the room. "How would I dare to sit next to you?" Shi Hongxian laughed out loud and said, "Those are all bullshit. They are merely words spoken to disparage others. How can be you the same as the others? Take a seat." Only then did Shen Zichuan take his seat. Shi Hongxian held out the tea to him and said with an apologetic smile, "If you ask me, the surname Shen is really holding you back. Don't you think so? If you had been born in the Han clan or the Fei clan, there wouldn't be this much animosity between us, right? Lanzhou, please be appeased. Now tell me seriously. What are you keeping this Qi Hualian for?" Shen Zichuan touched his sleeve pocket before he remembered his ivory fan was lost. He said, "The old loony has been scared stiff by the Crown Prince's suicide where he slit his own throat. I ran into him all the time when I was in Zhao Zhe Temple and heard some of his intermittent ravings, so I thought of keeping him just in case there's a future need. You should have asked me about the matter regarding the imperial grandson." Shi Hongxian brushed aside the tea foam. "Don't think about this matter anymore. It's impossible. Not even a chance of it happening?" Shen Zichuan turned the teacup around gently. He did not drink it. Shi Hongxian drank the tea, grunted twice and said, "That task was carried out together by Ji Lei and Shen Wei, both of whom were ruthless. Even the fair and beautiful crown princess was strangled to death by them, and you want to pin your hopes on them showing the imperial grandson mercy? What's more, they were the sworn enemies of the imperial grandson for killing his father. You think they had nothing better to do than to sow the seeds of future trouble for themselves? Was that what Shueshozhua said too? Shi Hongxian cast him a look and asked, "Why are you asking about Yanqing specifically? You're familiar with one another." Shen Zichuan's gaze did not falter. "You're on good terms with him. Wasn't your promotion to the Bureau of Evaluations this time precisely because you listened to his advice? Both of you are Zhuge Liang. I'll listen to whoever makes more sense." Shi Hongxian kicked the ball back and said, "They said scholars look down on one another. Why are you smart people also mutually belittling each other?" "That's really not it," Shen Zichuan said. "You were transferred into the Bureau of Evaluations before the inspections, and subsequently, this red-hot assignment fell upon you. That would make others green with envy. It's hard to say that this wasn't the reason you were set up. Shueshozhua has been an official for quite some years, and he never thought of it? If he did, then why did he still persuade you to go?" Shi Hongxian was drinking tea when his movement paused. He said, "Who would have expected someone to really strike out at me? It's not Yanqing's fault. He has rendered a meritorious service by protecting the emperor at the Nanlin hunting grounds. Yet he knew to conceal his abilities and bide his time at that time and didn't go all out. Instead, he went to the Court of Judicial Review for more experience." Having said to this point, Shen Zichuan continued no further and merely smiled at Shi Hongxian. "I just find it strange." As if he had not heard it, Shi Hongxian smiled too. "Oh my! This interruption almost made me forget about it. Lanzhou, now that I've recovered and His Majesty has woken up, the Chief Surveillance Bureau will start to impeach me. Help me think of a way. I can't be transferred out of Kudu. The fault lies with His Majesty this time. But no one is blaming him. And the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Revenue are both shirking responsibilities and shifting the blame around. You happen to land right in the middle. Everyone will naturally target you." Shen Zichuan set aside the teacup. "This is a tough one to deal with. Pan Xiangjie and Wei Huaigu, 3 ha," Shi Hongxian said. "At the end of it all, they just want money. Getting rebuked is really no big deal. They are only latching on to me because they wanted to take advantage of the situation to raise the price and make me fish out money to pay for the shortfall with my own money. How many people died this time? As long as His Majesty is fine, everything else can be bought. Without tens of thousands of taels this time, I'm afraid it'll be hard to settle." Shen Zichuan said with a smile. "I have money." Shi Hongxian set aside the teacup too and said, "But I'm not willing to give it to them. I'm at fault for accompanying His Majesty to the brothel. But the public ditches have nothing to do with me. I'm not going to oblige if they want to slap unreasonable demands on me and use me as a scapegoat. An official 1 grade higher can oppress an official 1 grade lower than him. Even if you are not in the wrong, it will still become your fault. Reasoning with them won't work, and it's pointless to leave the mess as it is." Shen Zichuan maintained his composure and said, "Still a pain to deal with." Shi Hongxian said, "It's not hard. I'm telling you, the Emperor's heart is with me. Even if they want to punish me severely, they still have to see what the Emperor thinks. We mustn't lose our heads before Shao II has been dealt with. I am confident that His Majesty will definitely not be the same as he used to be after waking up this time." Chapter 72. Noble Rank Advancement. Chapter 72. Noble Rank Advancement. Shi Hongxian spoke with such certainty that Shen Zichuan just had to look askance at him. But Shi Hongxian was not willing to continue discussing further and merely said, "You don't have a proper place to stay now, so it's not convenient to keep Qi Hualien around. Why not leave him with me?" "It isn't appropriate to leave a raving loony at your place either," Shen Zichuan said calmly. "What do you want him for?" "In my opinion," Shi Hongxian held out his hand flat, like a hand blade. The best option would be to finish him off. It's inadvisable to get yourself involved with all those old affairs. The more you know, the worse it'll be for you. Shi Hongxian brandished his hand and looked at Shen Zichuan. Or are you unwilling to? Shen Zichuan said, Of course I'm unwilling to. He's an old minister during the reign of Yongyi. He knows Shen Wei well. I have a use for keeping him alive. If Shen Zichuan had agreed readily, Shi Hongxian would not have believed him easily. So he said it with 70% truth and 30% falsehood to throw Shi Hongxian off. As expected, Shi Hongxian made no further mention of killing him. He said, Are you still thinking of investigating Shen Wei's case? You should have said so earlier. Lanzhao, do you have to go so far as to hide this bit of matter from me? When have I ever hidden it from you? Shen Zichuan smiled as he lifted the teapot and poured tea for Shi Hongxian. Isn't this matter obvious? As long as Shen Wei remains guilty, I'll never be able to live honorably. The evidence against him is conclusive, and his infamy has already been deeply impressed on everyone's mind. Even if the charge against him is dropped, it will not be enough to convince the masses. Shi Hongxian said, A felony like selling his country to seek personal glory is something that can never be scrubbed clean, even over several lifetimes. Plus, it's pointless to just rely on the imperial court's pardon alone. There are many kinds of rumors in this world. He, Shen Wei, has already been crucified to death under the spray of spittle. Poor you. I can only advise you to forget about this matter. It's not something you'll be able to clear up. Shen Zichuan silently set down the teapot. Seeing the atmosphere growing heavier, Shi Hongxian continued, You are already now an imperial bodyguard of 5th grade, and you still take those rumors and slanders to heart? Please don't. Look ahead. You've done a good job on this mission, so you should be getting a promotion, yes? Shen Zichuan said, Nothing is confirmed yet. I haven't even settled down in my post of Southern Judge. Charging all the way up to the top isn't necessarily a good thing. This time, you and I have to act carefully. We are really gambling with our lives here. Shi Hongxian tucked his fox fur properly and said, We have to investigate and get to the bottom of this matter. The other party is hiding in the dark, while we are out there exposed in the open. If we can't get to the bottom of the matter, then it would be hard to guard against the enemy. I'm the one who got crushed this time. But what about the next time? You should watch out too. It's inconvenient for me to stay for long here today. Lanzhao, I'll see you at the residence in a few days. Saying so, Shi Hongxian rose to his feet and surveyed the surroundings again. This courtyard seems decent to me. If you don't have enough money, just let me know. Just don't take what happened today to heart, all right? With that, Shi Hongxian smiled. Shen Zichuan smiled too. Both of them reconciled, as if there was no ill feeling between them, as if what happened earlier was merely just them horsing around with one another. Qiao Tianya sent Shi Hongxian off. As soon as he returned to the courtyard, he saw Shen Zichuan standing with his back to him and with his face facing the main hall. He was wiping his hands with a handkerchief. The setting sun outside the courtyard crossed over, casting a scarlet-red hue over Shen Zichuan's embroidered python robe. His slightly lowered neck was as fair as jade. He wiped those slender, flawless fingers, which were clearly clean, yet he seemed to detest them to bits. Is he gone? Shen Zichuan turned his head aside to ask. I saw him get on the horse carriage. Qiao Tianya stopped a short distance away from Shen Zichuan. He did not move forward, but bent over to pick up a fallen leaf on the ground that had been trampled and scrutinized it for a moment. The men he hired are all masters from the martial fraternity, yet a fight didn't break out. Most likely, Ji Gangshifu was on his guard, and the Grand Mentor did not resist. Shifu burned his face with fire to ruin his looks, all to conceal his identity and live incognito. Not starting a fight hastily is a wise move. Shen Zichuan neatly folded that blue handkerchief. Teacher mustn't remain in Shi Hongshuan's hands for too long. We need to think of a way. Qiao Tianya crushed the leaf without disrupting Shen Zichuan's contemplation. Shen Zichuan suddenly turned around and was dazzled by the sunset glow. But he did not flinch or hide from it as he looked towards that towering and majestic palace. Legitimate bloodline, Shen Zichuan murmured and asked Qiao Tianya. Who's living there? Qiao Tianya followed his gaze and looked over as well. He replied, the Li clan. No. Shen Zichuan's eyes were cold and indifferent as he said with a mocking smile, it's a deer. If Zhou lost its deer, the heroes of the world may all pursue it. One today you say it's the Li clan. Tomorrow I can also say it's some random person on the street. Whoever can step onto that dragon throne at the peak will be the legitimate, rightful one. Qiao Tianya prided himself on being a nonconformist with an unconventional, rebellious streak, but even he did not expect Shen Zichuan to have the audacity to say such words. In his astonishment, he took a few steps back and looked out into the distance at the palace. He said, such rebellious words are tantamount to having no respect for the law. You know there are countless gentlemen in this world, all of them good men with unyielding steadfastness and unfailing loyalty. Shen Zichuan kept the handkerchief back into his sleeve and said, the Earl of Bianxia, Lu Pingyan, is known as the wolf and tiger of the border town. To protect and hold on to Bianjuan commandery, he has given away all his family fortunes. Although he has received a noble title conferred by the emperor, all he eats every day are pickled vegetables and sweet potatoes. Subsequently, Lu Guangbai becomes hard-pressed for military funds whenever there is a war. And because Lu Guangbai is not on good terms with the 8 great clans, he has never been conferred a noble title despite all his outstanding and illustrious military achievements. So tell me, is it that satisfying to be such a gentleman and loyal official? Ask your conscience first before we talk about satisfaction. To be an outspoken and candid minister, you have to sacrifice the self and give up your selfish desires. 2 Suotian passes Feng Yixing's entire family of loyal heroes died martyrs in battles. This is what we call the epitome of righteousness. Shen Zichuan's insanity, which he had suppressed earlier, swept over him again. He stood up and burst out laughing, saying, Qiao Tianya, you are not a nonconformist who has deviated from the norms at all. You are a prisoner of the norms. You are one who can be a gentleman. Qiao Tianya said, Master. The sunset glow on the horizon faded into night, and darkness came shrouding all over. The pear tree bared its withered branches and brandished them threateningly, casting shadows over Shen Zichuan's raised face. But, in this world, someone has to be the traitor and the rebel. I don't believe that fate is decided by the heavens. If there's a blade held against my neck someday in the future, I will not show mercy even if it's Li Jianheng, let alone Shi Hongxian. The bloodline legitimacy Shi Hongxian speaks of is no different from the nonsensical ravings of a fool. Anyone will die when a blade slices across their necks. There's no exception regardless of whether one is a D born of the legitimate wife or a Shu born of a concubine. In the cold, dreary night, the crow of dusk let out a few mournful caws. Shen Zichuan looked back at Qiao Tianya. My ambition is not to be a gentleman, nor is it to be a good person. Since vindictiveness has become the tenet I live by, then a kindness given is kindness given, a wrong done is a wrong done. I want Shi Hongxian to pay with his life for what happened today. The wind assailed the scattered clouds and scraped the remaining leaf off the tip of the branch. The impeachments from the Chief Surveillance Bureau came bearing down upon them in torrents. Shi Hongxian, Pan Xiangjie, Wei Huaixing, and even Hai Liangyi were all censured one after another. Sun Yu took charge as the chief commentator as the few parties attacked one another on the imperial court. Having just woke up, Li Jianheng hardly said much these days and simply let them argue among themselves as he held court in Mingli Hall. Hai Liangyi was already in ill health before the epidemic happened, and lately he looked even more emaciated. Not once had he had the moment to rest, and now, listening to the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Revenue starting an argument again, he could not help but let out a few violent coughs. Li Jianheng hurriedly said, "Secretariat Elder, there's no need to rise. If you have something to say, you may voice it out while seated." Hai Liangyi bowed his thanks and covered his mouth with a handkerchief. After his coughing eased up a little, he said, "The Grand Secretariat has already submitted the clauses for rewards and punishments this time to His Majesty's table yesterday. If Your Majesty finds any part inappropriate after looking through it, you may reject it and let the Grand Secretariat discuss it again." Li Jianheng had been absent-minded, and Hai Liangyi originally thought that he would hem and haw. He did not expect him to say after a moment's pause, "I've seen it. And there are indeed some parts one don't understand and would like to ask of the Secretariat Elder to clear my doubts." The entire hall of officials was dumbfounded the moment the words left his mouth. Li Jianheng opened the memorial and said, "The Imperial Army has done a meritorious service by dredging up the public ditches. Xiao Qie is already a second-grade viceroy of the Imperial Army. Just the reward of some gold and jades is simply too meager." Hai Liangyi answered, "The military drill ground on Mount Feng is undergoing an expansion this year, and the money will be arranged for by the Ministry of Revenue. This could be said to be a waiver of his biggest expenditure this year. This humble subject feels that the reward cannot be too excessive. This is sufficient enough." Li Jianheng said, "But the deployment of medicinal herbs, quarantine of the patients, and dredging of the public ditches are no small matter. He has done a great job with them all." Hai Liangyi pondered it over and said, "It's true that he has rendered meritorious service, but these matters are not something the Imperial Army can achieve on its own. If he's shown too much special favor, I want to advance his noble rank." Li Jianheng closed the memorial and looked at Hai Liangyi. "He's the second son of lawful birth of the Prince of Libei. If he had gone into battle and slain the enemies, then he should have a noble rank and title by now." Hai Liangyi did not answer immediately. Li Jianheng said, "I've been thinking about these issues the few days I was confined to my sickbed. I wish to confer the title of Marquis of Dingdu upon Xiao Qie. What does the Secretariat Elder think?" Hai Liangyi said, "You mustn't, Your Majesty. Unless it's military achievements, one cannot be conferred a noble title. Although Xiao Qie has made great contributions this time, it's far from the point where he can be made a marquis. The Lu clan of Qidong's Bianjuan Commandery has numerous military achievements to their name. Yet, only the old General Lu Pingyan is currently conferred with the title of the Earl of Bianxia. Firstly, Xiao Qie has not stabilized the borders, and secondly, he has not driven out the enemies. I fear it will only be hard to convince the public if you make him a marquis out of the blue. To begin with, he has done a meritorious service by protecting me at the Nanlin hunting grounds, and he has, yet again, shown no fear in the face of danger this time. It's a good thing the epidemic did not spread. This matter concerns the peace and stability of Kudu. Is this still not considered a merit? The Earl of Bianxia, Lu Pingyan, has transferred the garrison troops of Bianjuan Commandery in private numerous times. The reason his noble rank has not advanced is merely because his merits are offset by his demerits, and vice versa." As Li Jianheng spoke, his eyes reddened. He covered his face and choked with sobs. "Don't tell me my life is nothing worth mentioning either? The purpose of bestowing the title of Marquis upon him is to commend and honor him. There will be no increment of the numbers of soldiers in the Imperial Army, and no establishments of private rights. It's just a title in name only. Is this not even acceptable, either?" Wei Huaigu initially meant to impeach Xiao Qie for privately deploying the medicinal herbs without authorization, but seeing that the situation was not favorable for his cause, he changed his mind and said, "What Your Majesty thinks is reasonable. Xiao Qie's decisiveness and fearlessness in times of danger should be commended and rewarded. But what the Secretariat Elder says is true, too. In this humble subject's opinion, why not honor Shao Qie with the title Earl of Dingdu first? No. Hai Liangi would not budge. There's absolutely no logic in doing so. Your Majesty, if you grant Shao Qie a title today, then you will greatly disappoint the old general at the frontier. It's an established rule of the imperial court that a noble title cannot be conferred on one without military achievements to his name. Li Jianheng said, "How about we first promote Lu Pingyan to a marquis, then confer the title of earl upon Shao Qie? Does the Secretariat still not agree to this?" He spoke of conferment as if it was child's play. Hai Liangi's coughing intensified. He wanted to say something further, but Pan Xiangjie beat him to it. He said in a fluster, "This humble subject thinks it's a good thing. This would be your Majesty's first conferment since your Majesty's ascension to the throne. It's a special honor. Secretariat Elder, one mustn't be a stickler for conventions on every single matter. Now that he has indeed made a contribution, what's the issue with making an exception?" Seeing the noble clans unanimously urging Li Jianheng, Kong Qiu could not help but kowtow and said, "This humble subject thinks the Secretariat Elder is right. Your Majesty, Lu Pingyan has spared no effort to defend the Bianjuan commandery. Even if he's to be conferred a title, it shouldn't be done in such a hasty and sloppy, hasty? I've been repeatedly asking the opinions of all of you here, and yet you still say I'm hasty." With a fling of his sleeves, Li Jianheng rose to his feet and pointed at Kong Qiu, saying, "I can see that you are always going along with the Secretariat Elder's words on the imperial court. The sovereign and his ministers. Exactly who is your sovereign, and whose minister are you?" The various ministers all kneeled and said in unison, "Your Majesty, please be appeased." Kong Qiu immediately said, "Your Majesty is the sovereign of this humble subject, and this humble subject does His Majesty's bidding. But it's indeed inappropriate to bypass the regulations and go ahead with the conferment. I am going to confer the title upon him." Li Jianheng wept as he said, "Each time I met with calamity one after the other, it was only with Suan's help that I could avert disaster and escape unscathed. Even when I want to bestow a title upon him, you people have to turn me down and throw obstructions in my way. The Secretariat Elder has the final say over all the matters in this imperial court, so why not let the Secretariat Elder sit on this throne instead?" These words truly struck Hai Liangi where it hurts. Unstable on his knees, Hai Liangi covered his lips and coughed violently. He never met with officials outside the court and the capital, and he had never held any private feast. In order not to get involved in a faction or clique, he worked hard day and night. And he taught and guided Li Jianheng with utmost care, all because he feared getting slandered and stabbed in the back. He was the most trustworthy minister, a right-handed man of the emperor, not a tyrannical official in power. Seeing Hai Liangi coughing until he was all hunched over, Li Jianheng did not dare to create a scene further, and got someone to help Hai Liangi up. Nevertheless, he still said, "No matter what, Shao Qie shall be conferred a title." With the commotion in Mingli Hall, the imperial edict was issued a few days later. Like a bolt of thunder out of the blue, it caused a startled wave of memorials flooding in from all over. Lu Guangbai brought his father to receive the imperial edict at the Bianjuan commandery. Lu Pingyan was promoted to the rank of marquis. Even he himself was at a loss how to react in the very moment he held the edict in his hands. The Lu clan had buried generation after generation of its people in this yellow sand. In his heyday, Lu Pingyan was also known as the wolf and tiger of the border town. He was renowned for his military exploits, along with Xiao Fangxiu and Qi Xiu. And now, injured and sick all over, and before he retired from active duty to take up an advisory post, he finally received his reward. Yet, it was all to pave the way for a junior of the younger generation. Shao Qie was originally sleeping in his residence when he heard of the arrival of the imperial edict, Thus he put on his clothes and came out to receive it. After reading the imperial edict, Fumin beamed and moved to help him up, only to see a pale-looking Shao Qie who looked as if he had no intention of receiving the edict. This title mustn't be accepted. What Hai Liangyi had said was true. Although he, Shao Qie, had rendered meritorious service by protecting the emperor at the Nanlin hunting grounds, and had played a critical role in the latest incidents, his contributions were still poles apart from the hard-won military merits gained from battling with real weapons at the frontiers. Who was Lu Pingyan? That was the man who was on brotherly terms with his old man, Shao Fangxiu. Now that they had humiliated and trampled over Lu Pingyan to confer on him, Shao Qie, a title, how would Shao Qie be able to take office in the various garrison troops at the frontiers? How would he be able to convince the masses? And the most crucial thing was, what would the Lu clan think? Could Shao and Lu still be brothers? Ding-do ding-do. This was simply to nail him dead in Kudu. Had Li Jianheng's bout with his illness fucking short-circuited his brain? Rage bubbled up in Shao Qie. What's more, he had not gotten a good sleep. He tugged at the official robe he had not worn properly and suppressed his fury to say expressionlessly, "Go and report back to His Majesty that Shao Suan is not worthy of the title and does not dare to accept this overwhelming favor from His Majesty, nor does he dare to accept this heaven-sent noble rank." Chapter 73, Conferment. Chapter 73, Conferment. Shao Qie did not accept the imperial edict. Fumin did not dare to persuade him further and hurried his way back to the palace to make his report. After hearing the whole story, Li Jianheng leapt to his feet and said, "Is the Son of Heaven's orders something he can reject as he pleases? When I reward him, he should kneel and accept it. Go again." Griping to himself, Fumin climbed onto the horse again and returned to Shao Qie's residence. Seeing Shao Qie still kneeling, he hurriedly held the imperial edict and bowed to persuade him. "Viceroy, Viceroy, why do this? Didn't we roll and crawl down there in the ditches all for this?" With a hint of displeasure on his face, Shao Qie said, "I don't want this noble rank. Don't bother wasting your breath on me." Fumin was so anxious and desperate that he stomped his foot where he stood. But he could not accept the edict on behalf of Shao Qie. All he could do was to play for time. Then let him kneel. Back at the palace, Li Jianheng promptly flew into a rage when he heard the reply. In order to grant him the reward, I even rebuffed the Secretariat elder, and he still dares to put on airs? Let him kneel. So the sovereign and his minister, one within the palace and the other, beyond, remained stuck in a deadlock. At present, it was the third lunar month in spring, and the ground was icy cold all over. Shao Qie kneeled with a straightened back, determined to get Li Jianheng to revoke his order. Perhaps he could have accepted the edict, then used various means to handle this matter in a better way. But he was not willing to. The Lu clan in Qidong was held in check by the Qi clan at the top and invaded by Bianxia at the bottom. Li Jianheng had been gunning for the easier target when he trampled upon Lu Pingyan, because the Lu clan was not on par with the Qi and Shao clans. The food and clothing expenditures of those 20,000 troops of the Bianxia commandery were all in the imperial court's control. They did not even have military fields. Otherwise, the Lu clan would not have to stoop so low as to demand payment every year, or be so poor that they had to sell their family properties and belongings. In the past, when Lu Guangbai entered the capital to make his report, he was never taken seriously. Which typical official in the capital would have such audacity? They were all merely taking their cues from the higher-ups. When Emperor Xianda was around, it was rare for Lu Guangbai to be able to seek an audience with the emperor. This was not simply a matter of him being liked or detested, but because it concerned the balance of Qidong's military power. The Shao and Qi were both great generals stationed at the frontiers. Why did the Hua clan have to guard against the Prince of Libei alone and go to so much trouble to trap Shao Qie in Kudu? Because the Shao clan was the only dominant force in Libei Great Commandery. There was no other leash in the entire territory that could reign in the Shao clan, so they could only tie up Xiao Qie and turn him into a cage to restrain the Libei armored cavalry. Qidong had two generals, Qi Xiu and Lu Pingyan, who were on par with one another back in those days. But why was Qi Xiu eventually the one who was conferred with the title of the Five Commanderies Commander-in-Chief? This was all because Lu Pingyan and Xiao Fangxiu were on close terms with one another, and they were in-laws to boot. The Lu clan was the chess piece that provided checks and balances to the power between the three parties. The Lu clan's position in the Bianjuan commandery was crucial. It was a heavy responsibility entrusted to them by the imperial court. But even so, the imperial court did not generously bestow titles and ranks upon them. This was meant to hold the Lu in their control and let the Lu be held in check by both the Qi clan and the imperial court. The Lu could only be a weapon used to fight the foreign enemies. There was no way they could be high-ranking provincial officials with military authority at the borders, and consequently, there would be no way they could be the second prince of Libei. At present, Lu Guangbai had to consult Qi Juin for the use of troops and consult the Ministry of War and Ministry of Revenue in Kudu for the use of money. Lu Guangbai was the commanding general in charge of the Bianjuan commandery's defenses. If Qi Juin had not been generous in delegating authority and gave him the prerogative to self-deploy troops in times of peril, then he would be even more of a predicament than he was at present. This time, Li Jianheng advanced Lu Pingyan's noble rank, yet there was no actual promotion taking place. Thus, the Lu clan could only remain perpetually hungry cattle and continue to work to their deaths at the Bianjuan commandery. Their reputation had gone up a notch on the surface, but it was actually an insult deep down. Half of the Lu clan's current difficulties had to do with the Xiao clan. Therefore, Xiao Qie must not accept the edict without so much a gesture. The fact that the imperial edict could be issued made it clear that the Grand Secretariat had given the nod. In that case, it was certain that this order would not be revoked. There was no reason for the Son of Heaven to change his order. But Xiao Qie definitely must not accept it with great delight. Even if he had to kowtow and act unreasonably, or even throw a tantrum, he had to show the Lu clan his stance. It was by virtue of power and might that Li Jianheng could trample all over the Lu clan, because the imperial court had the Lu in their grasp. In contrast, it was by virtue of friendship that the Xiao clan did not dare to do the same, because both families had always considered the other brother. If this friendship were to break up, then the Xiao clan would lose their assistive force in the southeast. Xiao Qie kneeled until it was dark. Fumin did not dare to sit down arbitrarily and stood at the side with the imperial edict in his hands. After an unspecified amount of time, they heard the sound of hurried footsteps from the entrance. An eunuch arrived and conveyed the orders in an urgent tone. "Viceroy, you may stop kneeling. Please get up. His Majesty summons you for an audience." Without demur, Xiao Qie lifted the hem of his robe to get up and got onto his horse to leave. Fumin hurriedly got onto his horse as well, not daring to grouse when he saw Xiao Qie not showing any signs of exhaustion. Mingli Hall was brightly illuminated. Li Jianheng sat on the dragon throne and listened as someone announced Xiao Qie's arrival. But he did not summon the latter in and remained seated to trace characters. Without being summoned, Xiao Qie could not enter, so he could only kneel outside Mingli Hall. It was already late, and the leftover cold water on the freshly scrubbed floor dampened his robe. The entire courtyard of eunuchs moved quietly, not daring to make a sound. Li Jianheng stared blankly at the glazed lamp. He had been thinking a lot this silent night. By the time he returned to his senses, it was already the hour of Cho. He sat for a moment, then suddenly rose to his feet and walked out. The palace maids withdrew, and the eunuchs kneeled on the ground. The shadows on the ground were trodden upon. Xiao Qie did not lift his head. Li Jianheng looked down at Xiao Qie. In the past, he was always looking up at Xiao Qie. When they were hanging out on the streets together, Xiao Qie could be said to be his big brother. They called each other brothers, and they played the fool a lot too. Li Jianheng thought he treated Xiao Qie with his utmost sincerity. How did they get to where they were today? Li Jianheng was dressed in a bright yellow, round-necked robe with narrow sleeves. With his hands on the amber belt on his waist, he moved over to Xiao Qie's side and looked at the luminous moon above the majestic palace eaves. He mulled it over for a moment, then said, "There's no one else here at the moment. Let's talk." The cold moonlight cast a blanket over them, effusing a chill along with the wind. Li Jianheng said, "Aren't you usually a bold one? To think giving you a noble rank this time can also scare you to such an extent." Xiao Qie said, "It's incompatible with reason and intolerable under the law." Li Jianheng paced and said, "Don't give me that. You have never been one to talk about reason. Before the Nanlin hunting grounds incident, we were still good brothers who would risk our lives for the other. After the Nanlin hunting grounds incident, we truly became the monarch and his minister, separated by a huge rift. Suen, isn't it good for me to be the emperor and for you to be the viceroy? Why do you have to put on a front with me like this? Just accept the rewards you are awarded with. Cowering like this is really unlike you, Xiao Suen." Xiao Qie could tell what he meant and said, "If your majesty wants to reward me with gold and treasures, I'll promptly kowtow and say my thanks. But not for a noble rank. I've served as an official for 6 years, and I do not have any notable achievements or mentionable merits in Kudu to show for or to speak of. I feel uneasy now that I have received your majesty's kindness and become a marquis at a sudden snap of a finger." "What's there to be uneasy about?" Li Jianheng scoffed. "With our relationship, you should have been conferred a title a long time ago. The Grand Secretariat interferes with my every move, picking on anything and everything I do. I never had a chance to do this, no? This time you've earned it. Earlier, when Lu Pingyan was conferred a title, it was also because he had effectively resisted and repelled the Biancha cavalry at the border. You protected the emperor in Kudu, and in that, ensured the safety of our empire and society. I see no difference between both. There's no rush since the Grand Secretariat has qualms about this." Xiao Qie said, "We can't hurt the old officials' feelings. The older ones are always thick-headed and obstinate." Li Jianheng said, "How can they be so inflexible? Even those in the flesh trade know when to be flexible and read the situation. But these major ministers are still holding on to broken pieces. How very meaningless." After this scare, I thought about a lot of things during my recuperation. Since I've become the emperor, it's not productive if I just keep crying and whining. We have to find some way to live on, right? I'm not an unreasonable man. Just voice it out if there is good reason to. It's not like I'll execute them. Like this time, I want to confer a title upon you, but the Secretariat elder didn't agree and led the others to make a scene before me, saying that I was hasty and sloppy in my decisions. I was so troubled over this matter that I spent nights tossing and turning, and they still say I'm hasty." Li Jianheng turned back as he was speaking, and the gold dragon on his crown flashed in the moonlight, giving him an imposing air of elegance and nobility. He did not tell Xiao Qie to rise. After a long pause, he continued, "I'm the emperor, I can't renege on my word. Since the edict has been made, you just have to accept it. You've already rebuffed me once today, but we are brothers, so I won't hold it against you. But if you continue to be so stubborn with me again, then it won't be something that can be settled between brothers, and neither of us will look good for it. Deal?" Xiao Qie was silent for a moment before he said, "Your Majesty, that won't do. The inspection is around the corner. It's a good thing to advance old General Lu's noble rank. He deserves it. But not for me. It's for your Majesty's reputation that I'm not accepting it. I'm someone your Majesty single-handedly promoted. If I can't convince the masses in everything I do, then how can I still attend to official duties for your Majesty in the future? Those who are in charge of military troops are all concerned about their reputation and dignity. If you give this dignity to old General Lu by showing him due respect, then I will subsequently come to benefit by association too. Are you making up all kinds of excuses to decline for my sake or for the Shao clan? Do you really think I don't understand just because you didn't say it? Li Jianheng stared at him. We are brothers who should treat each other with candor and sincerity. Yet you keep treating me like a fool. It's for the sake of our friendship that I'm rewarding you, but you turned it down for your own selfish desire. I told you to be honest with me, and you are still beating around the bush with me. Shao Qie, don't you have a conscience? This question Li Jianheng bellowed was so forceful that it faintly reverberated through the cold, dreary night. You're afraid of offending Lu Pingyan. Why is that? Li Jianheng suddenly flung his sleeves. And you still dare to say you're loyal to me? You are doing it all for yourself. You don't dare to say it, so I'll say it for you. You're afraid of offending Lu Pingyan and ruining the friendship between both your clans, which would make it hard for you to mutually look out for each other. But let me ask you, Shao and Lu both have their own respective military forces to defend the borders, so what is there that you need to look out for each other for? Shao Qie tightened his fists, with his thumb ring jammed in the area between his thumb and forefinger. All of you are wolves and tigers. Li Jianheng pointed at Shao Qie. You people have your mind set on kudu. I was merely sounding you out, and you showed your true colors. Military powers gang up with one another, and the Shao clan wants to be in the same faction as the Lu clan, and then what's next? Tell me, what are you going to do? Shao Qie abruptly half-propped himself up. He had a well-built physique, and kneeling on one knee like this made him seem as if he was a panther ready to spring into an attack. Li Jianheng immediately took a few steps back and looked at him, badly shaken. Of course it's to do those Biantia Baldies in. Shao Qie's expression was fierce as he looked at Li Jianheng. 6 years ago, when the Zhongbua troops were defeated, my eldest brother rode non-stop through the night to come to the Emperor's rescue. How dangerous that battle at Xizhou was. Meanwhile, Lu Guangbai held his spear in hand and a dagger in his mouth and fought for 3 nights before he could break through the siege. He immediately hurried over to Kudu without even stopping to rest to help Kudu out of their predicament. Everything Your Majesty had said today is an affront to the Shao and Lu clans' loyalty. That's right, the reason I'm not accepting the noble rank today is because of Lu Pingyan, but even more because of the unwavering loyalty of the various generals at the frontiers. It's all because of Your Majesty's kindness that I, Shao Suan, a good-for-nothing, could live in this kudu without having to worry about my own life and death, nor stress about heading out to war. If I could even become a high and mighty marquis with this, then what would Commander Qi and General Lu, both of whom are still enduring hardships at the frontiers, think? After saying so much, you are just doing it for your own untainted reputation. Shao Qie's words were firm and resounding. My life is worthless, but Your Majesty is the ruler of our prosperous lands. If you were to reward me for this small bit of contribution and it ends up diminishing the general's loyalty to Your Majesty, who would lose out more? Your Majesty or I? Li Jianheng looked hesitant and doubtful. Shao Qie refused to let this go and continued. If this is merely a show I put on to collude with the Lu clan, why did Secretariat Elder Hai try so hard to convince Your Majesty? Your Majesty, you don't trust me, but don't you trust the Hai Liangyi whom the late Emperor appointed and who has come to the Emperor's rescue thrice? Your Majesty has repeatedly met with danger and misfortune, and immediately right after, you are disproportionately dishing out rewards. Whoever it is that's instigating and abetting Your Majesty ought to be executed. It was as if Li Jianheng was suddenly jolted to his senses. He retreated under the eaves, held on to the vermilion pillar for support, and said, "But the imperial edict has already been issued. Your Majesty is the sovereign of a new reign and imperial court. It was inappropriate to bestow rewards during the state mourning period earlier. But now that the 2 great imperial affairs of spring plowing and inspection are in full swing, why not seize the chance to proclaim a general amnesty to the world and reward the various generals at the frontiers according to the merit evaluation from the Ministry of War? It's not just permissible to advance Lu Pingyan to the rank of Marquis of Biancha. On the basis of the Lu clan's most number of enemy kills at the Bianjuan commandery, they should be rewarded again with an increase of military provisions. Jueshi had a bumper harvest last year, and their granaries are filled to the brim. This would not only write off the state treasury's additional expenditure on dishing out monetary rewards, but also relieve the Bianjuan commandery of their pressing need. The wedding of old Commander Qi is fast approaching. Your Majesty, if you also reward and confer 3rd Misihua with the title of Commandery Princess, then you'd be raising Qidong's prestige. Xiao Qia's words were earnest and his gaze frank. You are the sovereign of a great empire, the common ruler of all under the world. Who would still harbor any discontent when you bestowed such grace and favor all around? When Emperor Xianda ascended to the throne, the Empress Dowager was the one making the decisions for him, and consequently, he missed his opportunity to make such a big splash during his reign. The most pressing issue to Li Jianheng now was to prove himself as an emperor. He was suspicious and reacted to another's instigation only because he was afraid of being declared unworthy of his position. Xiao Qia's words simply pushed all his right buttons. All right, with delight on his face, Li Jianheng came down again to move towards Xiao Qia. Fine. Suen, get up quickly. It's cold on the ground. Fumin, who was kneeling at the bottom, listened with marvel. Who would have thought that in just a few hours, Xiao Qia would be able to seize the opportunity to deal a counterattack and avert the crisis? If not for having a firm grasp on Li Jianheng's temperament and mindset, he would never have been able to hit right on the target in just one blow. The more he thought, the more elated he was. There's hope for him if he throw in his lot with the second young master. Chapter 74. Toast Exchange. Chapter 74. Toast Exchange. The second month of the lunar year was crucial for planting mulberry and flax in spring. The various localities hurried to submit their reports and urged the Ministry of Revenue to allocate funds. With mountains of trivial affairs piling up, the various departments were so busy they were burned out from exhaustion. Li Jianheng dished out the rewards and conferments, and Xiao Qia was promoted to the rank of Marquis of Dingdu. Meanwhile, Shun Zichuan received a skip in grade and was promoted to a 3rd-grade vice-commander. He also concurrently took up the portfolio of the Northern Judge and began to take charge of the imperial prison. The Grand Secretariat initially did not agree to this, but Xinyu submitted a memorial to make a strong case for a recommendation. Hai Liangyi also saw Shun Zichuan in a new light because of the epidemic, and so it was decided. Xiao Qia carried the earring case on him, but he never found the opportunity to run into Shun Zichuan. Shun Zichuan was on the go all over the imperial prison, having to go through all the cases accumulated before the new year one at a time. He was so busy he skipped sleep and meals. On the other side, he still had to get Xiao Tianya to lie in wait and keep a watch on Shi Hongxian so that he could find a way to get Qi Huilian and Ji Gang back. Young swallows made a ruckus on roof beams, while the young shoots of weeping willows spouted. The vermilion walls and green glazed tiles of Kudu gradually showed as the weather remained clear and sunny for several days in a row. On the day when spring rain fell uninterrupted, Xinyu hosted a feast and invited a few friends from the latest incident. Hai Liangyi was not one to attend private banquets, and it just happened that he had yet to recover from his illness, so he did not partake in the feast. By the time Shun Zichuan arrived, it was already late. He was led straight to the main hall. When he lifted the curtain, he saw that it was full of officials who were familiar faces to him. Han Qing, Kong Qiu, and Xinyu shared a table. Xiao Qia already had his 3rd round of wine, and he was listening with propped arms to Yu Xiaozai, whose seat was at the bottom, telling jokes to an entire hall of important ministers. The moment Shun Zichuan entered, Yu Xiaozai hurriedly paid his obeisances and greeted him. Your Excellency is late. Please hurry and have a seat at the head of the table. Shen Zichuan removed his cloak and said with a smile, There's much to do in the imperial prison, so I'd like to ask of your excellencies to please bear with me. I'll sit at the bottom. Sun Yu stood up and beckoned to him, saying, Those etiquettes for public display won't work at private banquets. Once you are here, we are all friends despite our age differences. So why still stand on ceremony? Old Han, you tell him. Han Qing said, It's as he said. Lanzhao, come on up and sit here. The few of us old and useless ones have the honor of being in the company of the Marquis today too. Your lordship, you could be said to have lowered yourself for us. Commander-in-Chief, what you're doing is putting me down. Xiao Qie seemed to be a little drunk. He did not look at Shen Zichuan and merely smiled. Who present here is not a respected elder? I'll still have to look to all of you for advice in the future. Shen Zichuan had already taken his seat, which was a little distance away from Xiao Qie across the table where he would be able to reach the ladder if he stretched out his legs. Both men did not look at each other, nor did they greet the other. Kong Qiu looked left and right at them and said with a smile, I've long heard that both of you have beef with each other. Why won't you even say a word on meeting each other? You worked on this assignment together, and it seemed all good to me. So why still take those past grudges to heart? The way I see it, both of you are young and promising, and you don't deflect the responsibility to each other when you're working. So why not take the chance today to bury the hatchet with a smile? As Sun Yu spoke, he raised his hand. The imperial bodyguards and the imperial army have to mutually look out for each other, too. There are plenty of opportunities for both to continue working together in the future. Your lordship, what do you think? Would that do? Xiao Qie lazily cast a look at Shen Zichuan. His gaze was indecipherable. He only said, How would it not do for me? What is there that I can't do with a smile from His Excellency the Judge? I should say my proper thanks to His Excellency for this time too. When have I never greeted your lordship with a smile every time I see your lordship? Shen Zichuan touched the wine cup. I've long forgotten the past. It's just that there has been no opportunity before, isn't it? Han Cheng was the one who had the most drinks with Xiao Qie. On seeing this, he picked up his chopsticks again and said as he picked out the food, Then, let's have a drink. Your lordship, please do me the favor. Yu Xiaozai, who had not sat all this while, promptly filled both of their cups to the brim with wine. Xiao Qie held his cup with both hands and said without getting up, Then, let's toast. Going by their official grades, it was indeed the case that Xiao Qie should not get up. Shen Zichuan stood up, revealing his wrist bones as he lifted his cup. Xiao Qie suddenly said, Since this is wine to settle old grudges, then it naturally can't be drunk in such a common way. Judge, how about a nuptial exchange of matrimony wine? One Han Qing promptly laughed. He pointed at Xiao Qie and shook his head as he said with a sigh, Your lordship, that's too unethical of you. Why put Lanzhao in a spot? How is this putting him in a spot? Xiao Qie said, I can't even begin to love and honor him. Aren't we doing all this as an expression of our determination? Knowing Xiao Qie's temper, Sun Yu thought that Xiao Qie was still harboring animosity over Zhongbua and that he was intentionally making things difficult for Shen Zichuan. Just as he was prepared to speak up to dissuade Xiao Qie, Shen Zichuan laughed. Sure. Shen Zichuan said. We'll do as his lordship says. Shen Zichuan held up the cup and leaned over, where Xiao Qie could see his faintly discernible collarbone. Both men's arms intertwined. As Shen Zichuan drank the wine, his Adam's apple throbbed. Xiao Qie's gaze seemed to let out a gurgle too as it followed the wine down into that robe. Xiao Qie drank very slowly. He held the wine in his mouth, his gaze never once leaving Shen Zichuan. All the time his arm was hooked around Shen Zichuan's arm, Shen Zichuan could clearly feel his sturdiness. Xiao Qie seemed to let out a laugh when he finished drinking, but no one heard it. Only Shen Zichuan lowered his eyes to look at him. His gaze was naked, and brimming over with dangerous desire. Shun Zichuan extracted his arm and sat back, his back dripping with sweat. Xiao Qie seemed unfazed as he put up his arms again and inclined his head to listen to the conversation. Sun Yu said, "After the spring plow, it'll be the spring examinations. The Imperial College wants to recruit new students this year. Looks like the Ministry of Revenue will be getting another headache." Kong Qiu snorted a laughter and said, "What would Wei Huaigu ache over? He's the money keeper. He ought to compute them. To begin with, all these should have been suitably arranged way earlier. For him to wait until now to do so is already considered a dereliction of duty. He's the money keeper, and you're the living king of hell." Han Qing set down his chopsticks. Having had his fill of wine and meal, he said, "Zhongbua is in such a mess at present, and the number of cases submitted to the Ministry of Justice is as innumerable as the number of hairs on an ox. It won't do for them to keep delaying sending someone over to take charge of the situation there, would it? I think the Secretariat Elder is mulling over whom to send over." Sun Yu lamented. If Lanzhou formally joins the central administration as an official, then he might have a chance this time. Whether it was due to the heat or the wine, Shun Zichuan's face was a little red. He said, "I can't. I'm not qualified and experienced enough to be assigned out of the capital. I won't be able to quell the unrest. Just gain more experience and it'll be fine." With his interest piqued, Han Qing said, "It is said that officials from the capital are wily. But how can the capital officials be as slippery and sly as the local officials? Some years ago, I went down with the Chief Surveillance Bureau to check the accounts, and all those capital lords and old masters were all very crafty and cunning. There were 2 copies of all the account books in their residences. Even if you, Sun Xuanyi, went, you would not be able to distinguish the real accounts from the fake. Every year, when the Imperial envoy heads down, there would be a great flurry of activities. Having long heard the news, they would drive out all the disaster victims and refugees in their territories before your arrival to prevent you from seeing them. This is the so-called no-hunger concern in the territory you see in the evaluations. Once you arrive, they would hold a banquet and think up reasons to dunk you with wine. You'd drink until daybreak, then sleep until nightfall. You'd be so drunk that you can't even stride out of the prefectural yamen. So what energy would you still have to check the accounts? Once the time is up, and the silver is in the pockets, the evaluation would be marked as outstanding. Then it's off to the next place to drink. And that's considered the end of the check. But there are still those who do their jobs. You can't taint them all with the same brush." With that, Sun Yu sighed again. When Xue Xiuzhuo went down a few years ago, he was a formidable sight to behold. All the accounts of the 13 cities of Jueshi were sorted out in perfect order without a single error. I originally thought he would be assigned to the Ministry of Revenue. But who would have expected the Secretariat Elder to transfer him to the Court of Judicial Review instead? Can he get anywhere being Wei Huaigu's subordinate? Kong Qiu leaned against the chair. The current Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue exists in name only. Wei Huaigu alone calls the shot and has the final say in the overall management of financial affairs. Won't he be rendered useless if he goes over? The Secretariat Elder has the intent to polish him. He's meant to achieve great things in the future. Kong Qiu never had any social dealings with Wei Huaigu and Pan Xiangjie. That he was only friendly to them on the surface but estranged from them deep down was a fact everyone knew. So he was not afraid to speak out in Han Qing's presence. Han Qing laughed out loud and said, "Don't discuss state affairs at a private feast. How can you forget this? Old Kong, you ought to be punished." Thinking that they were almost done with their meals, Sun Yu said, "When Yu Jing 3 returned a few days back, he told me about a game. It still seems early to me, so why don't we give it a try? Yu Jing, take those cards of yours out." Yu Xiaozai readily agreed in response. He took out a wooden box, opened it to take out small carved wooden cards and said, This is something this humble subordinate saw others playing when I went to Yongi Harbor for supervision and inspection, matching cards to pair couplet. Your Excellencies, give it a go? Han Qing said to Xiao Qie, I'm not good at playing literary games like these. Your lordship, how about giving me some advice? Xiao Qie drank his wine and said, Does the commander-in-chief think so highly of me, Xiao Sun? Do I look like a man who reads? It's just for fun. Let's just go along with it. Yu Jing, deal the cards. Yu Xiaozai dealt the three of them the cards. Fiddling with his wine cup, Xiao Qie was just looking at the cards when something brushed against his calf. He paused suddenly and fixed his gaze on Han Qing's cards. Han Qing looked at his cards with a frown and said, The heck are these flowers and plants putting me in a spot? Your lordship, do you recognize this? Xiao Qie said, Throw them both a line based on the foxtail grass. I guarantee, that foot with a clean sock tapped Xiao Qie's knee, and its sole stepped on his kneecap, as if testing the position. Guarantee they'll be stumped. Han Qing tossed a card out and said with a smile, The swallow teases the foxtail, spring arrives. I randomly made up the first line of a couplet. So now, Xuani, pair it up. Han Qing truly was not a learned man, but he did not let it hold him back. On hearing this, Kong Qiu and Sun Yu laughed. While the three men were talking, Xiao Qie cast a look at Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan grasped his fan, a little moza bamboo fan that Xiao Qie had sent someone to deliver to him. He tapped the fan intermittently and listened intently to the conversation. As if sensing Xiao Qie's eyes on him, the corners of his eyes lifted in a little smile. That foot had already slid in between Xiao Qie's legs. It nudged against the inside of his thigh, as if wanting for more. Xiao Qie held the wine cup with his thumb pressed against the rim, as he remained motionless. Isn't it a fox? After a while, Xiao Qie let out a laugh. He lifted his hand to pick out an ink-traced fox from Han Qing's cards and tossed it onto the table. Moist is the night as the rain seeps through my roof. Sultry is the fox's song in my dream. Where to seek the tide of spring? That wet, persistent drip is the hint. Sorry for the obscenity. Han Qing exchanged toasts with Xiao Qie, then laughed and said, We are being serious here, but why is it that you just had to turn a fox into a vixen when it's your turn? A foot reached out from under the table. Its toe slowly slid up Xiao Qie's calf, playing back and forth a few times along the curve of his calf. But men like me, Xiao Qie drank his wine and looked at Shen Zichuan. Simply attract foxes. How is any respectable person able to continue with that? It's too crude. Kong Qiu laughed and sighed. You, Xiao Sun, don't even close the door tight when you sleep, and you still blame the others for looking for you. You're obviously looking forward to it yourself, right? Xiao Qie did not say a word. But when that foot stepped down on him gently, he laughed. The upper half of Shen Zichuan's body was so steady that nothing seemed off. He rubbed his fingertips, which had been tapping on the fan. In this room full of heat, even the corners of his eyes were about to redden. It just so happened that Sun Yu threw the card onto the ground. Yu Xiaozai quickly stopped what he was doing and made to lean over to pick it up. Shen Zichuan prepared to retract his foot. But unexpectedly enough, Xiao Qie reached his hand down to grab hold of his ankle. His soul was stepping on Xiao Qie's unmentionable spot through the fabric. Xiao Qie slipped 2 fingers into the clean sock and stroked Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan's fan rested on the tabletop. Yu Xiaozai had already lifted the hem of his robe and his waist was already slightly bending over as he said, Your Excellencies, please lift your legs. Let this humble subordinate see where it has dropped to. Xiao Qie was not the slightest bit flustered as he steadily grasped onto Shen Zichuan's ankle. He exerted a little force with his thumb, caressing Shen Zichuan until Shen Zichuan felt a tingle of numbness run up his spine and tightened his grip on his fan. Chapter 75. Night Ride. Chapter 75. Night Ride. Yu Xiaozai held the hem of his robe up and was about to squat down when Xiao Qie let his wine cup drop. Han Qing, being near, ended up having his robe dirted. Yu Xiaozai left the cards and went to get a handkerchief for Han Qing to clean himself. Xin Yu was still squinting at his cards when the wine splashed him. He hastily tried to dodge it too, making Kong Qiu laugh loudly. Han Qing tugged at his robe and said to Xiao Qie, "Your lordship, you've had too much to drink. Even your hands are unsteady now." Xiao Qie raised his hand in apology and said, "Apologies, I'll get someone to send you a replacement tomorrow as compensation." "There's no need. Just how much is a set of robes worth?" How could Han Qing really let Xiao Qie compensate him? He did not even dare to pull a long face as he said with a smile, "We'll treat this cup as a toast from your lordship." Shen Zichuan had already withdrawn his foot. He leaned over and picked up the card from the floor. As he placed it on the table, he heard Xiao Qie laughing. The lingering warmth on his ankle where Xiao Qie had squeezed grew hotter amidst the laughter. Kong Qiu was already drunk. He looked completely opposite of how he usually did when he was in court as he struck a porcelain cup with his chopsticks and sang out incomprehensible lyrics alone in the chaotic atmosphere. Xin Yu, seeing Kong Qiu stir up such an improper and unsightly ruckus, tugged on his sleeve and said, "Baran, stop singing. Let's go home and sleep. You still need to sit in Shi Hongshuan's trial the day after tomorrow." Kong Qiu held up his cup, struck it with increasing glee, and said, "I remember that. I'm investigating him." Xin Yu could not keep a hold of him and said, "Thankfully, I was the one who invited you to the feast today, or else you would be impeached for sure for behaving in such an audacious, unrestrained manner." "Okay then, let them impeach." Kong Qiu said, "Let them impeach. Imperial censors ought to have the courage to speak." "Right, well said." Han Qing also laughed. "Before spring we were saddled with such a massive pile of work that we could scarcely breathe. How many times could we enjoy ourselves to the greatest? Let him enjoy himself to his heart's content. It's almost time to wind down. If we make a ruckus too late into the night, the Secretariat Elder won't be happy with us." Xiao Qie got to his feet and called to Chun Yang, "Send His Excellency Kong back in my horse carriage." The attendants swarmed all around, and Chun Yang helped Kong Qiu out the door. Xin Yu wiped away his hot sweat and said to the remaining men, "You don't know this, but Baran was also once an unconventional and uninhibited person, but because Secretariat Elder is particularly set on self-restraint and observance of proprieties, he put him in order and whipped him into shape. It's not advisable to drink too much of this wine. Why doesn't everyone wait for a moment while I'll tell the cook to boil some soups to sober you up? Drink it up before you leave. I was just thinking about your residence's dough drop and assorted vegetable soup." Han Qing forewent the formalities. "Add some vinegar to mine. I'll drink it before leaving." Shen Zichuan bowed and said, "The Imperial prison still has urgent cases to be processed tomorrow morning, so I won't stay. Everyone, please enjoy your meal. If time permits in the future, I'll invite everyone for another round." Han Qing knew that he was indeed busy of late and told him, "When you previously held the post of the Southern Judge, the military craftsman kept a close eye on you. Now that you've transferred to the office of the Northern Judge, there's no need for you to rush between both ends until you are too busy to do anything else. The subordinates will remember your kind treatment of them and naturally won't make things too difficult for you." Shen Zichuan uttered a sound of acknowledgement. Xin Yu insisted on sending him off. It would not do for Shen Zichuan to decline, so they walked out of the doors together. It was raining heavily outside, and everything was covered in a thick layer of fog. The drift of fresh air on their faces dispelled the wine-induced heat from their bodies, making them feel much more refreshed. Xin Yu led Shen Zichuan down the stairs and said, "To find time to attend the feast tonight, you must have pushed back a great deal of work." "Not quite. The urgent cases that need to be dealt with have been sealed and finalized before today." Shen Zichuan replied with a smile. Xin Yu nodded and said, "That's good. Assignments cannot be delayed." Sun Yu accompanied him all the way to the gates and then ordered someone to hold up an umbrella and lantern for him. He truly valued Shen Zichuan for his talents, but it was a pity that Shen Zichuan served in the imperial bodyguards. Finally, Sun Yu said, all the cases in the imperial prison are major cases that not even the 3 judicial offices can interfere with. You could be said to have enjoyed a meteoric rise with this position, so you must speak with caution and act with prudence. It is often said that being close to the sovereign is as perilous as lying with a tiger. Those who can handle affairs in the presence of the emperor are all born intelligent and quick-witted. That said, you needn't worry too much about qualification, for you are already considered to have reached success in your youth. You still have a long time to go and a long way ahead of you, so remember, there is no need to be anxious about anything else other than your assignments. The Marquis of Dingdu is not a narrow-minded man either. You are bound to have to work together on missions in the future. The hatchet has been buried tonight with wine. Even if you cannot become soulmates with him, it's still better to be friends who can look out for each other than to fly into a rage each time you meet each other. Lanzhou, I value your talent, and I hope that you will work hard and achieve success in your career. Sun Yu bared his heart out with such sincerity that Shen Zichuan was wholeheartedly convinced. He bowed, and Sun Yu helped him up again, saying, the road is slippery on rainy nights. Be careful on your way. You may go. Shen Zichuan draped the pristinely white fur coat that Li Jianheng had bestowed on him and bade farewell to Sun Yu. He did not get in the sedan, but let Xiao Tianya hold up the umbrella for him as one master and one servant walked into the rain. The two had not been walking along the streets for long when they heard the sound of hoofbeats behind them. Xiao Tianya shook the rainwater off before stepping aside, and as expected, saw Xiao Qie on horseback galloping towards them at full speed. Good timing. Xiao Tianya did not even get to finish his sentence as Xiao Qie bent to pick Shen Zichuan up and left with him. The water droplets kicked up by the horse's hooves splashed all over Xiao Tianya. He spread his arms open and slowly finished his sentence. Want to drink some Xiaojiu? One Xiao Qie was well built. Even with Shen Zichuan in his arms, he did not find it inconvenient. It was in this way he hugged Shen Zichuan as he effortlessly rode his horse away. The chest backing Shen Zichuan was firm and muscular, as if it was an indestructible iron wall of silver. Lang Tao Shui Jin galloped into the rain like a bolt of lightning flashing through the pitch-black rainy night. It trod into countless puddles of water, splattering them as it charged straight for the city gates. Who goes there riding his horse this late in the night? The guard at the top of the wall raised his lantern and demanded. Xiao Qie pulled at his cloak to wrap Shen Zichuan under it before raising his own waist token. He said, "Open the gates." Vice Marquis. The platoon commander at the top of the wall immediately paid his obeisances, then waved his hands and ordered, "Quick, open the gates." The gates opened with a loud rumble, and Lang Tao Shui Jin galloped straight out. With the night wind whipping against their cheek, Lang Tao Shui Jin galloped faster and faster, while a circling gerfalcon charged out from the rain and followed closely behind. Shen Zichuan held onto the back of the horse and said, "We can't go too far. Tomorrow morning." Xiao Qie grabbed Shen Zichuan's chin, pulled it toward himself, and tilted his head to kiss him. Shen Zichuan was not gifted at horsemanship, and other than Xiao Qie, he had nowhere else to hold on to as they raced forth like the wind. With one hand pressing against the jerking back of the horse, and the other clutching onto Xiao Qie's body for support, there was no way for him to look at the road in front. The pitter-pattering rain wetted his eyes as they kissed. They had not seen each other for 7 or 8 days. Xiao Qie embraced Shen Zichuan tightly with one hand, pressing him to his chest as he kissed down along his cheek to the side of his neck. Shen Zichuan's clothes were in disarray. The official robe beneath his white fur coat had been tugged open slightly. When he lifted his eyes, all he could see was the jet-black rainy night. The water droplets trickled down along the curve into his collar, drenching his clothes and even himself. His caresses wrinkled Xiao Qia's robe even as Xiao Qia made him gasp for breath. The rain poured even harder and noisier as Lang Tao Shui Jin ran blindly into the night. The path in front of them was already hidden in the long, dark night, and the horse was like the lone boat carrying a pair of lovers on a secret rendezvous. Shun Zichuan closed his eyes while taking all of it, shivering while bathed in sweat and rainwater. Xiao Qia did not say a word as the horse's hooves trod on mud. The path was so uneven and hard to navigate that a few ensuing bumps and jolts caused the sounds to escape from Shun Zichuan's throat. Xiao Qia was also sweating a little. Spurred on by the potent wine, he grasped Shun Zichuan amidst this frenzy of pleasure, making every rise and fall hit just the right spot. He was in even more high spirits after drinking wine, and he used his strength skillfully, making Shun Zichuan incapable of resisting and unable to escape. "Does the friction feel good?" Seeing that Shun Zichuan wanted to lean away, Xiao Qia clasped his hands and pulled him back in an embrace. Pressed against him, Shun Zichuan said, Xiao Qia said, "Next time, I'll grind the right spot." Xiao Qia stroked Shun Zichuan's earlobe and fastened an object. He pushed aside those drenched locks of hair and kissed it. As Shun Zichuan raised his head, the jasper swayed with his movement. He dazedly touched the pendant. Several times, he opened his mouth to speak, but he was always disrupted by his gasps for breath. As he rode on the tidal waves of euphoria, he gazed at Xiao Qia with a contradictory blend of understanding and incomprehension. Xiao Qia killed off the only remaining tenderness he had left. It was really bad for the spring days to warm up again after a cold spell, for this was the season to have fun. Scoundrels all like having fun. As long as they were together, they could create a stir where there was none. The suggestive look in their eyes when their gazes met and the tingle of numbness that sprang up their spines was so strong that they itched to tantalize the other into ripping apart his mask of decency. No one understood the debauchery taking place underneath their official robes. As long as there was no one else, they would show their true colors. Chapter 76. Casting the Net. Chapter 76. Casting the net. The night rain had just stopped, but the sensual dampness between the beddings lingered. The hot springs had been renovated anew. Although it was small, it was completed. With his clothes draped over him, Xiao Qia fed the horse and gerfalcon. All that could be heard on Mount Feng at the third quarter of the hour of Mao 1 was the sound of water dripping from the eave. He soaked in the mountain breeze for a moment with the front of his clothes opened. The chill of early spring gradually calmed the stimulation and excitement that had lasted all night. He had sobered up, but his passion had become all the more thick and viscous, followed by a kind of post-indulgence relaxation and tenderness. This was the pleasure of indulging in desire. Xiao Qia removed the saddle on Lang Tao Shui Jin's back and gestured to Meng. Meng promptly spread its wings and flew out of the eaves into the forest. Xiao Qia turned around to enter the room, where the heat and dampness had not receded. Shun Zichuan was sprawled over the pillow with the blanket over him. There was no way to tell if he was asleep or not. His half-exposed right ear was still wearing the earring. Xiao Qia lowered his hand to take it off for him and, in passing, rubbed his ear that had gone red from being clasped by the earring. Shun Zichuan let loose a sound. He had yet to fall into a sound sleep. He laid there for a moment, then slightly opened his eyes to look at Xiao Qia and said in a hoarse voice, "It's time we leave." Xiao Qia rolled over and lay down beside Shun Zichuan. He looked at him in the eye and said, "It's the day off today. It's still early." Shun Zichuan uttered a sound of acknowledgement and said, "There is still work to be done in the imperial prison." A busy man. Xiao Qia grasped his fingertips and pulled him towards himself. "In just one day, you rose to the position of northern judge, and you were also promoted to vice commander. The people you have to deal with now are all noble descendants of hereditary rank. It's going to be hard for you to manage them. There's bound to be someone who wants to trip you up with underhand means." Shun Zichuan said, It's not easy to be the son of heaven and the officials in his inner ministerial circle. It was in this way Shen Zichuan lay, with the word satiated written all over his expression. Both men looked at each other for a moment. Like the gentleness after a rainstorm, their kiss was both light and slow. In this humble thatched cottage, they wholeheartedly bared themselves to one another. It was as if in these few hours they left Kudu, they could cast aside all the so-called maturity and prudence to become young men of similar ages. Xiao Qia whispered, "This place is too small, with the view of the sky all blocked by vermilion walls, and the mountains and plains all surrounded by cities. Lang Tao Shui Jin can't run to its heart's content. When we return to Libei someday in the future, I'll take you galloping all over Hongyan Mountains." Shen Zichuan pressed against his chest and asked, "Is the moon in Libei as round as the moon in Duanzhou?" Xiao Qia thought for a long while before he said, "I've already forgotten. Is the grass in Duanzhou as tall as the grass in Libei?" Shen Zichuan also said, "I've already forgotten." They suddenly burst out into laughter, dispelling that bit of melancholy. Shen Zichuan took in Xiao Qia's scent as Xiao Qia pressed his chin against the top of Shen Zichuan's head. Xiao Qia said, "Let's go together." Shen Zichuan said, "Home?" Xiao Qia tightened his arms around Shen Zichuan and said, "Home. Let's ask Ji Gangshifu to go together with us. Libei is so big, there will be plenty of places to stay." Shen Zichuan laughed out loud and said with lowered eyes, "Shifu wants to return to Duanzhou. I'm afraid we won't be able to go together." Xiao Qia also lowered his eyes and said to him, "As long as we are out of Kudu, we will be able to go together, even to the ends of the earth." Shen Zichuan met Xiao Qia's gaze and said, "The wolf pup should be in Libei. Otherwise, it'd be a pity for it to become flabby due to a long period of inactivity." To Xiao Qia's eyes were calm and serene as he said, "Libei has my eldest brother, and the Libei armored cavalry has my father. Horse racing is the only thing that suits me." Shen Zichuan lifted Xiao Qia's chin and gazed at him. He said, "Natural talents are bound to have their own uses, it's just that the time has yet to come. Suan, all of Libei's hope lies in these two words." Xiao Qia laughed in a deep voice and suddenly rolled over to pin Shen Zichuan down. Pressing his forehead against Shen Zichuan's forehead, he said, "Do you want me or not?" Shen Zichuan's waist was sore, and his back was aching. As he recovered his strength and eased up his muscles, he squeezed the back of Xiao Qia's neck and said in a husky voice, "Are you giving me or not?" Xiao Qia lowered his head to kiss him and pulled up the blanket over them. After that rainy night, Kudu's weather took a turn for the hotter. The Grand Secretariat demanded Pan Xiangjie's dismissal from his position of the Minister of Works, while the Chief Surveillance Bureau submitted more than 10 memorials in a row to impeach Pan Xiangjie. Their daily contentions in the imperial court were so heated that it made Li Jianheng's ears ache. Originally, Wei Huaigu and the major league ministers from the other noble clans would stick together for mutual benefits. Thus, they would not easily abandon anyone. For example, men like Fu Linya were eventually demoted with a reduced salary and not exiled out of the capital. After the fall of Hua Xiqian, Hai Liangyi took over the position of the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat. Although he entrusted Xue Xiuzhua, who was from a noble clan, with heavy responsibilities, he had also successively promoted several low-grade officials from humble backgrounds. Of them, Kong Qiu was the most conspicuous, and both sides pit against one another, overtly and covertly. However, what happened this time was a matter of grave importance. If Pan Xiangjie was not impeached, then Wei Huaigu would have to be impeached. Someone had to take the blame for the clogged official ditches. There was no way to find a scapegoat at all. The way things were playing out, the Ministry of Revenue was obviously much more important than the Ministry of Work. To the noble clans, the one who did manual labor could be cast aside, but the one who managed money must be retained. It was not just Pan Xiangjie who had to be dismissed and prosecuted. Even his eldest son of lawful birth, who was the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue, had to be suspended from his post to await impeachment. Li Jianheng no longer spoke up on the imperial court that easily. After adjourning the court, he called for Xiao Qie, and both men wandered around the garden for some spring appreciation. I heard that you braved the rain to head out of the capital some days back. Dressed in bright yellow regular wear, Li Jianheng picked some candied fruits from the table and shared half with Xiao Qie. For what purpose? The military drill grounds are close to Mount Foam. I get worried each time it rains. It has only been a few days since the public ditches incident, so I rushed over that night to take a look. Xiao Qie smiled and replied, as if he did not notice that Li Jianheng had sent someone to keep an eye on him. Your Majesty knows of that military drill grounds too. Cost the Imperial Army a lot of money. If it were to get damaged from the rain, those 20,000 men of mine would have to share and put up with the 8 great training divisions. If you bring the Imperial Army to the 8 great training divisions' military grounds, the Ministry of Revenue will promptly allocate the funds to you tomorrow. Li Jianheng tossed the candied fruit into his mouth and said, I've seen enough these days to understand that they are guarding against you. They are only too glad to be as far away from you as possible. Xiao Qie said self-mockingly, we are all attending to official duties. Where did they get that many ideas from? Li Jianheng recalled the last time Xiao Qie was besieged and attacked on all sides by these people on the imperial court and promptly said, they are full of evil tricks and they are crafty to boot. Each one of them is such an eloquent speaker when it comes to handling matters, but in truth, they are all for the specific purpose of setting others up. They even dare to cajole me. What's more, we have to punish this Pan Xiangjie this time. He did not do his job properly and almost caused me to die. And guess what? Last night, Commandery Princess Zhaoyue entered the palace to keep the Empress Dowager company. The Empress Dowager knew better and said she would not interfere in state affairs. Only then did she manage to send her away. Tell me, how would a lady who's about to get married know about the insides and outs of these matters? Isn't it all because she was forced to by the Marquis of Helion? After all, both of their families are in-laws. Xiao Qie followed Li Jianheng down the stairs and walked beneath those newly sprouted branches. He said, Has your Majesty made up your mind to punish Pan Xiangjie severely? Li Jianheng said, Of course. We mustn't let him off easily. There was a picture of the disaster victims from the low-lying area sandwiched inside the memorial tsin you submitted. They are really too pitiful. I'm the emperor who lives in the imperial palace. Just like what the Secretariat Elder said, there are many matters I can only find out through word of mouth. Pan Xiangjie's negligence and tardiness in clearing up the clogged ditches caused so much harm to the others. I definitely have to punish him. The Secretariat Elder has the same intent too. Having tasted the sweetness from dishing out rewards and having been praised by the imperial censors, he now wanted to single out Pan Xiangjie to make an example out of him. I happen to disagree with the Secretariat Elder. Xiao Qie said out of the blue. Pan Xiangjie deserves to be punished. But this man mustn't be too easily removed from office. Li Jianheng turned his head back and said with a frown, If we don't deal with him after he makes such a blunder, then are you going to keep him around for him to make another one? Xiao Qie cast a glance at the clear sky overhead and remembered what Shen Zichuan had said. He suddenly laughed and said to Li Jianheng, Of course your Majesty has to deal with him. But if you dismiss him from his post, it'll be tantamount to cutting off his career path. Pan Xiangjie is currently advanced in age, and he has also made some contributions in his position of the Minister of the Ministry of Works. Your Majesty, the blockage of the public ditches this time caused a surge in slop, which has indeed flooded and damaged the streets. Yet the embankments of Kaling River remained solid and secured like a wall of iron. In previous years, when the localities were flooded, there were very few dams and embankments that could hold up. Clearly, Pan Xiangjie has put some thoughts into this and has not cut corners. But his negligence and oversight of the public ditches is a fact, too. There's no reason to let him off easy just because of Kaling River. Your Majesty, Xiao Qie said, the court assembly this morning discussed the allocation of funds for the spring plow. The Ministry of Revenue has been wrestling with the localities over this, and this matter has been stuck at an impasse for half a month. If we wait any further, we will miss the time. What has this got to do with not dismissing Pan Xiangjie? Li Jianheng was not too pleased. Even if we retain him, the Ministry of Revenue will not allocate the fund. Wei Huaigu's subordinates are all very articulate. Even the Secretariat Elder can't be bothered to waste his breath on them. Only the imperial censors from the Chief Surveillance Bureau can tie with them when it comes to rebuking and condemning others. The Ministry of Revenue? The subordinates who are currently capable of attending official duties are all Wei Huaigu's protégés, so naturally, they will act according to Wei Huaigu's will. But Pan Xiangjie's son, Pan Lin, also happens to hold the post of Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue. If Your Majesty can simply go through the motions in dealing with Pan Xiangjie this time, then their Pan clan, graced with imperial favor, will surely remember Your Majesty's kindness. By then, his son would be just like Your Majesty's son. If Your Majesty has to deal with the Ministry of Revenue in the future, you'll have your own man in the Ministry of Revenue who can speak up on your behalf. Furthermore, once Pan Xiangjie is dismissed and prosecuted, the Ministry of Works will have to nominate someone else to take up the ministerial post. The new person may not necessarily be more loyal than Pan Xiangjie. Xiao Qie paused here and let Li Jianheng think for himself. Li Jianheng took a few steps and said hesitantly, "But if he's not dismissed, there still has to be a punishment that can convince the masses. Pan and Fei are related through marriage, while Fei and she are close to each other. What they don't lack the most is money. Your Majesty can fine Pan Xiangjie and get him to cover all the expenses incurred during the dredging of the public ditches, then hand him the punishment of flogging." "Flogging?" Li Jianheng said in astonishment. "He's so old, won't he be beaten to death? How is he going to mend his ways and be grateful if you don't let him have a taste of death?" Xiao Qie smiled. "Let the imperial censors rebuke him to their satisfaction. By the time Your Majesty summons him for an audience again, he will be deeply grateful even if Your Majesty tells him to bark like a dog in public, let alone cover the expenses." Delighted, Li Jianheng circled back and said to Xiao Qie, "As usual, you're the resourceful one. Wei Huaigu is also the one who ran the audit of the expenditure this time. I fear he has, out of impure intentions, doctored the accounts. So it's still better for Your Majesty to go over this case again and act with prudence." As expected, Li Jianheng looked to be put in a spot as he said, "This is a job for the Ministry of Revenue. Where would I have the man? The other ministries can't interfere in this matter either. Then find one of those in the Ministry of Revenue to do it. The official at the top can't give a clear explanation, but the petty officials at the bottom are all honest men who actually carry out tasks for Your Majesty." Xiao Qie brushed aside a branch and seemed to think about it before he continued, "I met a competent official at Zhao Zui Temple this incident. He was the one who kept records of the accounts for the medicinal herbs which the Imperial Army had submitted earlier. Even the Secretariat Elder was full of praise for him. Your Majesty, how about letting him try?" Overjoyed, Li Jianheng said, "If even the Secretariat Elder has praised him, then we can't go wrong with him." Xiao Qie said in a steady voice, "This man's name is Liang Cuishan. Shi Hongxian was taken into custody in the prison. He originally thought that with Li Jianheng to protect him and Xue Xiuzhua to use his power to help him, he would be quickly released. Who would have known that he would be locked up for so many days? No one delivered messages to keep him updated either. Thus, he guessed that something must have gone wrong somewhere in between. When Shun Zichuan arrived at the prison, he had his waist token with him. He was someone who had a drink with Kong Qiu before, and he was a newly appointed official who rose to prominence the fastest. So Qiao Tianya only had to use a few catty of wine to talk the warden around. When Shi Hongxian saw Shen Zichuan, he hurriedly got up and asked through the bars, "How is it? Why has there been no news? Has Pan Xiangjie been punished? If so, then it's time for me to be released." Although Shen Zichuan had his waist token hung, he was not wearing his official robe. He was dressed in a dark blue everyday wear with his collars tightly secured. His facial features were enveloped by the dim light when he entered, and the contrast of his clothes against the color of his skin made him look extremely white, with a hint of frostiness. "You're still waiting for Pan Xiangjie to be prosecuted?" Shen Zichuan said. "There's been nothing about Pan Xiangjie these days. He's in charge of the Ministry of Works. How will they justify it if they don't punish him after there's such a big problem with the public ditches? Even His Majesty won't be able to justify it." Shi Hongxian clenched and tightened his fist. What went wrong in between? To shirk responsibility and shift the blame, Wei Huaigu relentlessly latched on to Pan Xiangjie. But as you know too, things can backfire when it reaches its limit. Even a jade rabbit can bite humans when it's forced into a corner, let alone Pan Xiangjie. To mitigate their crime, the Pan clan wants to cover the expenses this time. The porridge shack over at Zhao Zui Temple has yet to be dismantled, and the womenfolk of the Pan clan has already gone over to give out porridge to the disaster victims. They put on a meticulous show and did a careful job of keeping up appearance while assuming the stance of eating humble pie, as if they were submitting themselves to physical and verbal abuses from the others. Like they say, not for the sake of the monk but for that of the Buddha. So even the Secretariat Elder would have to take this into consideration and reconsider his punishment. Without a smile on his face, Shen Zichuan said, "There's no way the Ministry of Revenue's delays of the accounts can be covered up. For everyone's good, Wei Huaigu should also admit his mistakes and endure a scolding. Yet, he is simply too oblivious and doesn't know when to advance and retreat. Second young master, since Pan Xiangjie isn't dismissed and Wei Huaigu isn't punished, then they can only single you out this time and put you on the chopping board." After a moment of silence, Shi Hongxian said, "Wei Huaigu is too money-minded. The reason he's suppressing this matter and refusing to relent is because he's afraid that the Ministry of Revenue's disparity cannot be covered up after he admits his mistakes, and Hai Liangyi would then have him in his grasp. Going by his temperament, if he can't kick out Pan Xiangjie to take the blame for him, then he will force me to fish out the money. No matter what, he won't let himself suffer. Fuck it, that wily old fox." When they were all bashing Shao Chia together, they all wanted to ride on the 8 Great Training Division's coattails and have a share in the benefits reaped from the 8 Great Training Divisions. But now, Shao Chia had not even been knocked out, and they were fighting among themselves. Shi Hongxian felt indignant. He had previously spent quite a sum of money on the matter concerning Shi Guan. The good thing was that their family's salt mines were not confiscated and sealed off, so they were still raking in money. In any case, the imperial court had no idea about the Shi clan's private account. But it was different when Wei Huaigu wanted money. The 8 great clans knew best what the 8 great clans were like. The Shi clan sold salt and headed out to sea, and they even kept and maintained a large batch of ships at Yongquan Harbor. These were stuff the 8 great clans knew all too well. Spending money to ward off calamities. Shen Zichuan said gravely and earnestly, "With yourself behind bars now, you have to choose a man you can trust to handle this matter for you on the outside. You are transferring money within private accounts. If the Wei clan wants some 10,000 taels, then just the transportation alone would be a big problem. There has to be someone who can organize it all for you. Furthermore, this matter is of utmost urgency, so have it done as quickly as possible." "Look for Yanqing," Shi Hongxian blurted out. Having done so, he hesitated again. Xue Xiuzhua knew the ins and outs of the Shi clan, and it was hard to say if he might get some other ideas during the process. The Shi clan's accumulated mountain of gold and silver was something the previous few generations risked their lives to hoard, and they had countless successions of connected shops and businesses in Jueshi and Huzhou. Shi Hongxian could afford the money, but there was no one he could really entrust it with. With Shi Guan dead, the few Shi clan concubines were really going at it with their abacuses. Perhaps even before he, Shi Hongxian, died in prison, he would end up dying by his own family members' hands. Shi Hongxian suddenly said, "Lanzhou, you've been promoted to vice commander, and you also manage the imperial prison. You have the special rights to enter and exit Kudu to handle cases. It's too inconvenient for Yanqing, with him currently being in the court of judicial review and all. I'm afraid he will be too conspicuous and end up being investigated by the others. How about you handle this matter instead?" Shen Zichuan was rather surprised and said, "I've neither managed accounts nor dealt with Wei Huaigu before, and I'm not familiar with your businesses on the outside too. So how would I be able to handle this well?" Unfamiliarity was exactly what he wanted. Shi Hongxian said, "There are managers appointed by me over at the Salterns. They are quick and efficient, so you don't need to worry about the money. It's just that transportation would prove to be particularly troublesome if the sum is too large. Tens of thousands of money worth would pile up into mountains when loaded onto the carts. You can't go the water route. All my family's routes are sea-based. Head inward to the north, and the Hua clan of Diqing has the final say, while the Yan clan of Huzhou calls the shots in the south. So you can only take the overland route, which would require you to traverse the 13 cities of Jueshi, motherfucker. I don't believe this much money can't bury that Wei Huaigu to death alive. In any case, you don't need to fear anything else while passing through Jueshi, but you must be on guard against Jiang Qingshan. This man is a tough one. If he catches us red-handed, I'll be skinned." Shen Zichuan was in no hurry to agree. He said, "This is an important issue. You should have a word with Shuexiuzhua and let him know." "No." Shi Hongxian considered it carefully. "Yanqing is not a person who can handle this kind of matter. It'd work to the contrary if he were to intervene again. You only need to tell him to continue to think of a way to plead for mercy on my behalf on the imperial court. His Majesty's momentary hesitation is no big deal, but when I get out this time, Wei Huaigu will be the first one I'll kill." After he said that, he smiled at Shen Zichuan. "There's no need for you to panic. I know you have never conducted a business transaction before. I left a bookkeeper in my Kudu residence. His name is Shi Dan, an old hand in my employ. Let him accompany you. I'll naturally have my own plans once I see him." Shi Hongxian was quick thinking. He did not dare to trust Shen Zichuan just yet. He remembered how Ji Lei had been played to death, so he held back and insisted on seeing his own man before he would take out his money. The Shi clan's keys were in a place only he knew of. Without the key, all the Shi clan's money vaults could not be opened. "Give it a few days," Shen Zichuan said softly. "I'll bring him to see you." Chapter 77, Dispute. Chapter 77, Dispute. Pan Xiangjie was suspended from his post as he awaited impeachment. Having also received a flogging, he sighed and moaned as he lay on his stomach back at home to nurse his injuries. His son, Pan Lin, was also implicated and had to endure the rebukes of the imperial censors every day during court sessions. A few days later, he was also suspended from his post to be detained and confined at home. Xiao Qie, having received a raise in rank, organized a banquet and specifically invited the Marquis of Helion. The Marquis of Helion was too embarrassed to appear before Xiao Qie because of the matchmaking attempt for Commandery Princess Zhao Yue the last time. He was also worried that this tyrant would be so proud of his success that he would humiliate him and make things hard for him before the others. So, after thinking it through, he got his son to attend the banquet on his behalf. Marquis Jr. was called Fei Shi. He was also a well-known figure on Donglong Street. He had once gone drinking with Xiao Qie in the past, but none of them lesser tyrants were as domineering as mega-tyrant Xiao Qie. What's more, he feared the Xiao clan, so he no longer went out for entertainment with Xiao Qie and would make a big detour whenever he saw Xiao Qie and Li Jianheng. Now that he had to attend Xiao Qie's banquet, he first wilted by half, then changed direction and headed to the Pan's residence to ask Pan Lin to go together with him. "Go with me. We'll treat it as relieving our boredom." Fei Shi held up his robe and urged him on. "The banquet this time is on Kaling River. There'll be many people there." Pan Lin's son was just a month old. He teased the baby for a moment before saying, "Not going. I've been feeling vexed these few days." "What fun is there in playing with a baby?" Fei Shi squeezed in to intercept the nanny and said, "I can't skip it this time. My father has specifically made his instructions clear. Go have some fun and make friends with him. I heard that he is friends with the left censor-in-chief of the Chief Surveillance Bureau, Sun Yu. If he steps forth and intercedes for you, then you wouldn't have to endure as many rebukes." "Seriously?" Pan Lin tossed aside the handkerchief. "Sun Xuanyi's the one who's the most brutal in reprimanding me. Xiao II only advanced in rank this time owing to his friendship with His Majesty. Just how much can he convince Sun Yu? I'm not going. I don't want to embarrass myself. Look at you. How are you this inflexible?" Fei Shi was truly racking his brains to coax him out of the door. He has a prior friendship with His Majesty. If he can put in a few good words for the Pan clan before His Majesty, would you still need to be aggrieved to such an extent? Come on, let's go. I had a drink with him before. I'll introduce you. Unable to dissuade Fei Shi, Pan Lin was dragged out of the house and onto the horse carriage, which headed right for Kaling River. With Xiao Qie hosting a banquet this night, all the gaily painted pleasure boats on Kaling River were full. He was now famous, and all the brothels and taverns along the riverbanks benefited from association, having gotten a piece of the action. Money was being splashed around on the outside like water. He did not even have to open his mouth. Flocking all around him were people trying every means to give him money. But there's no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Too, if he accepted their money, he would have to do them favors. If he did not do it today, then there would be plenty of pretexts for them to get him to do it in the future. Xiao Qie knew this all too well, so he did not accept a single coin. This was such a grand occasion, and he paid for it all out of his own pocket. Chen Yang flicked away noisily at the abacus in the back behind the scene. The more he computed, the slower he became. Eventually, he simply tossed away the abacus and said to Ding Tao and Gu Jin, "The palace has rewarded us with so many fields and mansions. Let's sort them out and find an auspicious day to sell them all." Xiao Qie just happened to come out after changing his robe. He cut an imposing sight, all decked in a gold crown, brocade robe and black clouds boots. On hearing Chen Yang, his countenance changed. He felt his way to his belt and said, "I'm that poor? We have too many expenses at the start of spring. The villages on the outside are self-sufficient enough to bring in some money. But many residences in Kudu are bestowed upon us by the palace. We can't rent them out, and we still have to arrange for someone to clean them daily. Our Prince Residence and Plum Blossom Residence are permanent residences, and there are at least 300 people or so who serve in both. The monthly salaries, monetary rewards, and, Xiao Qie said, and Ding Tao's candy allowance. You have to eat an entire frontier reconnaissance squad's worth of rations each year, right? We've spoiled you too much." Grabbing his little notebook, Ding Tao did not dare to make noise and merely mumbled, "The princess consort gave special permission for this when I was back at home. You've grown up." Xiao Qie said callously, "You don't need to eat candies anymore. They are bad for your teeth. I'll temporarily hold off on the calculation of the expenses tonight." Chen Yang held on to the table, feeling a little dizzy. He said, "I'll do it tomorrow morning. When it comes to dealing with matters," Gu Jin said succinctly, "a man's got to be liberal with his money. Do a proper audit of the accounts for those residences on the outside. I hardly go there even in a few hundred years, and Dage is too busy to manage them on his end too. When those subordinates go free and unchecked for too long, they would even dare to hoodwink others. Xiao Qia strode a long step out, then retreated back and said, "Calculate it now. It won't be more than a few thousand taels. There's someone managing this account." Gu Jin watched him step out of the door and asked, "Who? Who in our residence can manage how our second young master spends his money?" Chen Yang carried the abacus back, and flicked through it for a moment before giving an equivocally worded reply. Ding Tao rubbed his boots against each other and stretched out his head to whisper, "I know who it is." Not many officials were invited to this banquet. Court officials of 4th grade and above were all subjected to censure from the Chief Surveillance Bureau had they gathered for private feast. Xiao Qia was also the viceroy of the Imperial Army, so he could not invite any of the few important military officials who worked with him on the patrols. The feast Xin Yu held the last time was also a private feast. He first presented a memo to the Grand Secretariat, and it was only when Hai Liangyi gave his nod that he invited the guests. This was how it ought to be. Kong Qiu, having gotten inebriated that feast, ended up getting censured and had to sit through a lecture from Hai Liangyi. The censors of the Chief Surveillance Bureau were the imperial censors, just as described. They could rebuke the emperor at the top and denounce the various officials at the bottom. Even Hai Liangyi himself would receive a censure if he were slightly negligent. For example, during the public ditches incident this time, Hai Liangyi just so happened to hold the posts of the Grand Secretariat's Deputy Grand Secretary and Grand Secretary in successive order, so he would have to bear the blame had a problem cropped up. In the beginning, when Li Jianheng had just ascended to the throne, he found the dragon throne in Mingli Hall so hard that his buttocks ached if he sat on it for too long. Thus, he griped about it to those in close attendance. Not a few days later, he received a roundabout rebuke from the imperial censors. To this date, he never dared to bring up the matter of padding it with a thick cushion. Xiao Qia could not invite the authorities in power, but he could invite the nobles, or more specifically, the distinguished nobles. As long as it was a person of a hereditary noble rank, he invited them all. Most of these rich young masters with noble titles but no real power had someone in their family to back them, so they could have fun all they want with a peace of mind. One example was Fei Shi. His father was still alive and in good health, and his elder sister was about to marry a man from the Han clan, so he did not have to worry about his daily essentials like meals and clothing. He was not a good student either, barely learning anything. All he did the whole day was to loaf around. The moment Fei Shi stepped off the sedan, he dragged Pan Lin over to meet Xiao Qia. "Your lordship, congratulations." Xie Qia laughed and said, "I'm glad your little lordship is willing to honor me with your presence today. Please drink all the wine you want tonight." Seeing how approachable he was, Fei Shi could not help but relax. He said, "Your lordship is generous. I shall not leave sober tonight." Xiao Qia looked at Pan Lin and said, "Vice Minister Pan, please drink to your heart's content too. Is His Excellency Pan getting better these days?" Hearing his usual tone, Pan Lin, whose heart had been in his mouth, relaxed a little. He returned the greeting and said, "Thank you for your lordship's consideration. My father's health is fine. It's just that he feels ashamed in the face of His Majesty's graciousness and has been facing the wall to self-reflect on the errors of his ways these days." Xiao Qia seemed to sigh with emotion as he said, "His Excellency Pan is a veteran minister of 3 reigns. He acts with prudence and is conscientious in his handling of state affairs. It's truly a pity for him to meet with such an unexpected misfortune." Pan Lin had been suffering setbacks day after day. He had pleaded with a great number of people to intercede on their behalf and have their sentences reduced. Other than the Fei clan, who still had the heart to help them out of their difficulty, the others all came up with every kind of excuse to turn him away. He was born a legitimate descendant of a noble clan, and his career had been pretty much smooth sailing. It was only now he had a taste of the world and found out just how fickle and hypocritical society 3 was. Thus, he was greatly surprised and touched by Xiaoqia's words. "My father!" Pan Lin felt emotional, but knowing the etiquette, he forced a smile and said, "Forget it. I'm here tonight to congratulate and celebrate your lordship's great happiness, so let's not mention anything else." "Your lordship, congratulations! I'm just blessed to have His Majesty shower kindness and favor upon me. All I did was to carry out the task of rolling and crawling around in the mud. I can't be compared to the Vice Minister and His Excellency Pan, who worry about the state all day long." "Chen Yang." Xiaoqia turned aside. "Invite his little lordship and Vice Minister Pan onto the boat and serve them well." Chen Yang bowed and respectfully led them both inside. One side of the ship's interior was draped with hanging sheer fabric, and the sound of pipa flowed into the night. The seats were arranged according to levels of superiority. Chen Yang led them both to the seats of honor. Seated at this table were all descendants from the noble clans. Pan Lin saw a few acquaintances, but he did not greet them. Seeing the unfriendly atmosphere, Fei Shi hurriedly got up to mediate. He said, "Isn't this eldest young master Xue? What a truly rare sight." Xue Xiui was Xue Xiujua's elder brother of lawful birth. But this person had neither talents nor brains and relied solely on his birth to trample over Xue Xiujua for many years. For he was an ambitious man, and now, after seeing the Pan clan on the decline, he was starting to give Pan Lin the cold shoulder. Xue Xiujua drank his wine and merely said, "And how is the little lordship doing?" Fei Shi jabbed his fan and said, "Me? Not too bad. What has the eldest young master been doing lately? Come out for some fun." Looking haughty, Xue Xiui said, "I'm busy. Been studying some books that are the only copy extant from the previous reign." Fei Shi smiled and said, My, the eldest young master is a man of great talent. So why do you have time today?" All this while, Xue Xiui had his side to them, as unwilling as he was to look Pan Lin in the eye. He said, "I heard Yao Wenyu has returned to the capital. I thought I should be able to see him here tonight, so I came. There are some issues I need to talk to him about." Pan Lin had been tolerating him for a long time. Seeing this attitude of his, he promptly sneered and said, "Not necessarily so. The queue of people who want to pick Yuanjua's brain stretches all the way to Hongyan Mountain in accordance with their learning and accomplishments. It's pointless even if the eldest young master hangs around here waiting. It's still far from your turn." What Xue Xiui hated the most was the others making a dig at him for his lack of talents and shallow knowledge. He promptly set down the wine cup and said in a frosty voice, "Fine. I'm not worthy. But I still have a little self-awareness of my own limitations. I know my own worth. I know whether or not I'm deserving of sitting in this position." At his double-edged remark, Pan Lin abruptly rose to his feet. Xue Xiui had a mean mouth, and he sneered when he saw Pan Lin go red in the face. Instead of being enraged, he chose some scathing remarks to throw out. "Come on, Qingji, take a seat. Why? Are there nails on this chair? Everyone on this boat is looking at you. You are basking in glory tonight. Your Pan clan has indeed been impressive lately, even more so than the time you had a son." Pan Lin's first wife had previously died of illness, and there were a few times his concubines got pregnant only to suffer miscarriages. Seeing that he was already over 30 years of age, and was still without a son, old Madame Pan went vegetarian and prayed to Buddha while also seeking all over for prescriptions. In order for him to beget a son, she stuffed batch after batch of women into his room, causing such a hoo-ha that everyone knew about it and mocked Pan Lin behind his back for having an unmentionable affliction. Rage overwhelmed Pan Lin. He trembled and pointed at Xue Xiui, so furious was he that he gasped for breath and sputtered, You, and what the hell do you think you are? You let the common son beneath you take charge and manage the household affairs. You're simply as dumb as a boorish boar." Xue Xiui slapped the table and rose to retort, "You shut up, You are a disgrace to the educated class. You know dogs hit. Pan Lin countered, You're even worse than a beast. Sandwiched in the middle, Fei Shi held on to his teacup as he was splattered with a faceful of spittle. He closed his eyes and yelled, What the heck? Eldest young master, Qingji, stop quarreling. Why ruin a good banquet, Shueshui said. Don't put me in the same category as him. He's not worthy. He doesn't even deserve to carry my shoes. Pan Lin looked to his left and right, then picked up the teacup and smashed it. This entire table was thrown into chaos. Fei Shi could not stop them. Both of them showed utterly no regard for their dignity as they tangled and fought with one another. Shueshui stayed at home all year round. He was small-sized and thin, and he was not skilled at fistfights and kickboxing. Subsequently, he was shoved to the ground by Pan Lin and ended up banging his waist hard. He repeatedly wailed, Ow wow! To think you dare to hit me, you! Pan Lin had nothing left to smash, so he took off his shoe and swung it to swat it right at his face, saying, I'm teaching you a lesson on behalf of old Master Shui. The hell you think you are? Your foul mouth ought to be slapped. There was an uproar all around. Fei Shi dodged that shoe and said urgently, Stop fighting! Quick, stop it! Men! Xiao Qia lifted the curtain and entered, his expression growing grave. Chen Yang led the guards forth to stop them and pulled both men apart. Shueshui had been smacked until there were red marks on his face. He covered his face and stretched out his leg, wanting to kick Pan Lin. With his neck craned, he spat out hatefully, We aren't done yet. This is not over. Pan Lin was truly a sorry sight to behold. He had come to his senses now. He never expected to make a clown of himself in public. Avoiding all the eyes on him and enduring his misery, he said resolutely, Even if I, Pan Qingji, were to starve to death in the future, I'll never sit at the same table as you, Shueshui. And even if our Pan clan of Danqing were to die out, I'll never beg your Shui clan for help. With that, Pan Lin tossed the shoe to the floor. He raised his head, but did not look at anyone, and merely cupped his hands before his chest to Xiao Qia. I, Pan Qingji, will compensate your lordship for spoiling your lordship's fun, and I, Pan Qingji, will also pay you back double for all the things I've smashed tonight. Not only that, I, Pan Qingji, will even book this entire Kaling River for your lordship to have fun. Your lordship, I shall take my leave. I'll come calling on you another day to offer my apologies. He kicked off his other shoe too. And just like that, he stepped over the mess on the ground in his clean socks and pushed Fei Shi aside to make his way out. Your Excellency, please wait, Xiao Qia said in an unhurried tone. Chen Yang, take the vice minister to have a change of clothes first. Fei Shi hurriedly said, Right, Qingji. Let's get your clothes changed first. When all was said and done, Pan Lin was, after all, a noble clan young master. What's more, he was an authorized official of the imperial court. He had to speak tough, but if he really had to walk on the streets in this state, it would have been better to kill him. So, with Chen Yang and Fei Shi urging him on, he relented and went with them. Eldest young master. Xiao Qia lifted a finger to beckon Gu Jin over. He motioned, After you too. Chapter 78. Individual Servings. Chapter 78. Individual Servings. Pan Lin was in a depressed state of mind as he sat on the couch near the window after he had a change of clothes. Feeling guilty, Fei Shi sat before him and made to speak, only to have the words die on his lips. You don't have to say a word. Pan Lin looked out of the window at the old but brilliantly lit brothel courtyard. It's just my bad luck to come across a lowlife like him. Fei Shi said, You know he's a lowlife who has an extremely narrow mind. Then why get angry with someone like him? Qingji, it's not worth it. Pan Lin let out a self-mocking laugh and said, Has our Pan clan fallen into such a sorry state? I can give up my moral integrity had it been for the sake of a meal. But I'd rather die than to let him mock me like this. Seeing how sorrowful he looked, Fei Shi knew that the social snubbing these days had really hurt him. Although Fei Shi was a loafer, he was pretty much a person who took it easy. He comforted, as long as the green hills remain, one need not fear a lack of firewood to burn. Where there's life, there's hope. His Majesty has not even issued the edict yet. Qingji, didn't his lordship say so? His Excellency Pan is a veteran minister of 3 reigns. He'd still carry some weight in His Majesty's heart. On the other side, Gu Jin lifted the curtain, and Xiao Qie bent over to enter. Fei Shi and Pan Lin stood up together to pay their obeisances to him. Xiao Qie raised his hand and said, "Gentlemen, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Your Excellency Pan, please take a seat." Pan Lin took his seat and said to Xiao Qie, "Not only have I ruined your lordship's fun tonight, but I've also held your lordship up from enjoying the wine. I deserve a beating." Xiao Qie did not really mind. As he sat, Gu Jin served him tea. He took a few sips and said, "I've long heard of your Excellency's talents, but I have never had the chance to strike up a conversation. It could be said to be fate and luck that brought us here tonight." On hearing this, Fei Shi smiled and threw Pan Lin a signal with his eyes. Pan Lin hurriedly bowed. Xiao Qie motioned for him to take a seat again and said, "I was the one who carried out the task of dredging up the public ditches, so I know very well how it feels. The public ditches on Donglong Street were old to begin with, having been haphazardly dug before His Excellency Pan took up the post of Minister of Works. There are too many points in this matter that don't make sense. If you ask me, the blame for the rise in water level this time shouldn't be pinned on His Excellency Pan." A surge of warmth welled up in Pan Lin's heart. He said, "A few years ago, my father specifically asked someone to draw up a blueprint. But the Zhongba troops just happened to suffer a defeat back then, and the state treasury lacked money. The Ministry of Revenue refused to allocate the funds, so this matter was passed over. Who would have known, sigh? To think there's still such a thing." Xiao Qie covered the teacup with the tea lid. "But Wei Huaigu didn't mention a word about this before the emperor. Aren't both your families on good terms with one another?" Pan Lin said nothing, and Fei Shi hastened to say, "Your lordship, why is that Wei Huaigu is going all out to curry favors? It's all for the sake of being a top-league official. He endured for all these years, finally becoming qualified enough and just in time for the inspection this year. He's waiting for the evaluation to be submitted so that he can be promoted to deputy secretary. This is so he can stand up to Secretariat Elder High as equals on the imperial court in the future. No one expected the public ditches to end up clogged at this juncture. Of course, he has to think of ways to disassociate himself from it. He's not the slightest bit willing to shoulder the responsibility for this at all. I didn't expect him to be such a person." Xiao Qie looked slightly surprised. "Having seen how the Ministry of Revenue's accounts these years have been clear without any glaring errors, I initially thought that it should be Wei Huaigu's turn for a promotion this year. But who would have known that he would turn out to be such a vile person who seeks personal gains this shamelessly? What happened to His Excellency Pan is truly unfortunate." Hearing the hint of appreciation in his words, Fei Shi could not resist plucking up the courage to say, "Everyone has been pretty much close-mouthed about the information lately. Your lordship, Qingji and I had asked quite a number of people, and we still don't know what punishment His Majesty has conveyed to the Ministry of Justice. If His Excellency were to be sentenced, would be he assigned out of Kudu?" With his heart in his mouth, Pan Lin looked at Xiao Qie. Xiao Qie sat tight in the chair and twiddled with his thumb ring. Only when he had them on the edges of their seats that he said, "It's hard to say. His Majesty seems to me to be hesitating too." Fei Shi promptly said, "As long as the imperial edict has not been issued, there's still a chance to turn things around. Your lordship is truly an official in the Son of Heaven's inner ministerial circle now. I hope your lordship can put in a few good words to His Majesty regarding this issue." "I won't put in a good word for His Excellency Pan," Seeing both men's expressions change, Xiao Qie continued unhurriedly, I'll only speak the truth. His Excellency is talented and has made contributions to the state. Even if he has made some minor mistakes, it does not merit execution or banishment. I'll speak to His Majesty again when I enter the palace tomorrow. If all goes well, the pardon should arrive at your residences within 4 days. Pan Lin was so delighted that his eyes reddened when he stood up. He did not dare to overstep his boundary and touch Xiao Qie, so he could only grasp his own sleeves and fall to his knees hard, as though he was transplanting rice seedlings, and said, many thanks to your lordship for saving our lives. Gu Jin, quick, help the vice minister up. Xiao Qie said with a smile, this is what I should do. There's no need for your Excellency to take it to heart. When you return today, tell His Excellency Pan to rest well. There are plenty of state and governmental affairs where His Excellency is still needed in the future. Fei Shi, who was frank and outspoken, said, if there is anything we can do for your lordship in the future, please just say the word. Chengji, let's go. We have to head back and tell His Excellency the good news. Pan Lin thanked him again and said to Xiao Qie with sincerity, please let me know if I can be of help to your lordship in the future. Libei is too far, I'm afraid I can't help you there. But as long as it's in Kudu, I, Pan Qingji, will definitely do my utmost as long as your lordship gives the word. Xiao Qie said, there's no need to act like a stranger. However, you mentioned earlier that His Excellency Pan had found someone to draw up a blueprint for the public ditches of Kudu. I also happen to be worrying about the repairs for the public ditches. So could I trouble you to ask His Excellency Pan if he could lend me the blueprint for a look? Pan Lin said, there's no need to ask. I'll send someone to deliver it right to your lordship's residence once I return home. Xiao Qie comforted him some more, then watched as Gu Jin sent them off the boat. He listened to the reed pipes music from the pleasure boat for a moment before turning back to say to Ding Tao, eat what you like. Tell the cook to go ahead and dish it up. Once you're done eating, prepare some sweet and spicy dishes, then get the cook to grill some fishes carefully and have it delivered to your young master Shin. Don't alert anyone else. With his notebook in his bag, Ding Tao ran off. Chen Yang came up from behind and said to Xiao Qie in a hushed tone, Master, Xue Shui isn't going to stay for long inside. He's still waiting to see Yao Wenyu. Are we going over? Yes. Of course we are going over. Xiao Qie looked back with icy cold eyes. Xue Xiuzhua planted a time bomb for me in the Quanqing silk matter. I have to give him a big gift in return. Tell the attendants to serve a few more pots of excellent wine. This Xue Shui is of great use to us. The prison, which fell under the charge of Kong Qiu, was strictly monitored, so Shi Hongxian could not send out any information. It was as if he was cut off from the world. The more he waited, the more anxious he became. After waking up one night, he found himself detained in isolation, having been swapped over to a windowless room. Why is there a sudden change in place? Because Shi Hongxian was obese, he could not squat down as freely as he would like. All he could do was to bend over slightly and call out through the gap to the warden who was delivering his food, Bro, sir, at least tell me something. That warden paid no attention to his words and opened the flap to push the rancid rice and leftover soup in. Then he picked up the tray and left. Buddy, please hold it. Shi Hongxian raised his voice. I still have some silver in my pocket. Looking at how hard you've been working these few days, why not take it to buy some wine? Consider it my show of respect one to you. The warden turned back and spat a mouthful of saliva at him. Snubbed, Shi Hongxian sat on the straw mat in a daze without even taking his meal. He could not even sleep well these few days he had been waiting. He thought it over from different angles, but he did not where it had all gone wrong. The more time lapsed, the more uncertain he felt. This taste of being subjected to the whims of another was simply too hard to take. This room was damp, with no ducts for ventilation and no windows to let in light. Shi Hongxian would usually find it tough to sleep even on bamboo mats, and now, it was even more of a torture for him. Eczema had broken out on his back again, and he could not reach it even if he wanted to scratch. Later, Shi Hongxian heard a movement at the entrance. The door creaked open, and Shen Zichuan strode in. Behind him, Qiao Tianya, who was disguised as a stoic-faced youth, lit the lamp. Shi Hongxian struggled to move his legs and said, "What's going on? Why am I locked up here? Is this Kong Qiu's idea? I've never heard of there being such a room in prison. You are not a long-staying convict of the prison, so it's only right that you don't know about this place." Shen Zichuan pulled off his cloak and handed it to Qiao Tianya, then said to Shi Hongxian, "The food here is not fit for human consumption. I've specially prepared some dishes. Eat some, and we'll talk." With the cloak hanging over one of his hands, Qiao Tianya opened up the food box with his other hand and served up the delicacies they had bought earlier on the way here. Shi Hongxian sat on the straw mat and watched Qiao Tianya's movements in silence when he suddenly let out a laugh. His expression quickly cooled off and he said, "This looks like a farewell dinner. This case doesn't merit a death sentence, so why scare yourself?" Shen Zichuan sat down on the bench that Qiao Tianya had dusted clean. When he noticed that Shi Hongxian had not moved his chopsticks, he got Qiao Tianya to take out another pair of chopsticks. Then, he picked a few dishes to eat before sampling a mouthful of wine. It was only then Shi Hongxian moved his chopsticks. Shen Zichuan set down the chopsticks and looked at him. He said with a smile, "We are brothers. Do you have to be so tightly guarded against me?" Shi Hongxian picked out the steamed twisted roll and gobbled them down. It was only after his hunger subsided that he said, "Times are special. If you were in my shoe, won't you act the same way? How did that matter go? Have you seen Shi Dan?" Shen Zichuan finished up the wine in his cup and nodded to Qiao Tianya. Qiao Tianya opened the door and led the man in. "Second young master." Shi Dan pounced in. When he saw Shi Hongxian, he lowered his head and wept, "You have suffered." Steadying his hand, Shi Hongxian drank up the last drop of wine and said, "Get up! Don't make a fool of yourself. It's not the time for me to meet my maker yet." Wiping his face, Shi Dan said, "During these few days when the second young master was not at home, I've already informed the shopkeepers of the various areas to manage their accounts carefully. I wouldn't dare to let them mess up. But you're the pillar of the clan. We still need you to take charge of the affairs personally." Shi Hongxian ate his dishes in silence. After a long while, he said, "Tell me the situation out there." Shi Dan replied, "His Majesty wants to pursue responsibility for the matter, and both the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of Works do not want to shoulder the blame. At present, Pan Xiangjie has already been suspended, and he has already received a flogging. Seeing as the situation did not bode well, I went to plead with His Excellency Shui, but he was too busy with his official duties that I did not manage to get to see him at all." "Yanqing did not see you?" Shi Hongxian suddenly threw his chopsticks away and looked at Shi Dan with slightly narrowed eyes. "Are you telling the truth?" On seeing his disbelief, Shi Dan hurriedly said, "Second young master, how can this be falsified? All you have to do is to ask when you are released to find out the truth, isn't it? How do I dare to hoodwink you when it comes to such matters? Doesn't this coincide with His Majesty's issuance of general amnesty? The Court of Judicial Review is going to coordinate with the Ministry of Justice to leaf through all the past old cases. His Excellency Shui has to go through the files with Kong Qiu and the others. I don't dare to block his sedan chair either, and that's why I never got a chance to meet him." It was only when Shi Dan explained it in this way that Shi Hongxian more or less believed him. He said, "What rotten luck to be framed at this kind of timing. Lanzhou, exactly who instigated His Majesty to leave the palace? Is there still no update from the palace regarding this matter? There are only so many people around His Majesty, so just throw out a guess." Shen Zichuan said, "But it's obvious His Majesty is reluctant to investigate." He's clearly of the mind to protect the other party. Mu Ru is the only one who can make His Majesty protect her to such an extent. Shi Hongxian clenched his fists. Bitch is ruthless. There must be a reason for her to do so. You have to be careful. She'd better not be pregnant with an imperial heir and eyeing the throne to rule behind the screen. 2. Since she is in Shuexiujua's camp, I doubt she will conceive that easily. Once again, Shun Zichuan brought up the past. It was also Shuexiujua's idea for you to transfer to the Bureau of Evaluations. If it's indeed the case that Mu Ru wanted to harm you, I can no longer get what Shuexiujua is thinking. On the day Shi Hongxian abducted Qi Huilian, Shun Zichuan had also mentioned that it was Shuexiujua's idea for him to enter the Bureau of Evaluations. Now that he had brought it up again half a month later, the implication of his words had taken on a different undertone. Shi Hongxian pondered it over for a while, then said, "Let's leave these matters aside for the time being. Lanzhao, the priority is to get me out of here. What did Wei Huaigu say? How much does he want? I'll give him." Shun Zichuan extended 4 fingers. Shi Hongxian said, 400,000? Shun Zichuan did not move. Shi Hongxian propped himself up on the table and stood up. He exclaimed, 4 million? The dishes and bowls on the table collided. Shi Hongxuan's expression under the lamp gradually grew savage. He flung the wine cup without warning and seethed, "Good one there, Wei Huaigu. Well played, the Wei clan. So, 4 million." He began to laugh grimly. "This is the total military expenditure of Dazhou. It's almost as much as the cost of rebuilding Zhongbua. So much money. But how's he going to get it? That's truly a real mountain of silver. It would take half a year just to transport it separately from the West. And it'll also cost money to bribe the various passes and checkpoints during this period of time when the money is being escorted across territories. Even if the money makes its way to Kudu, where is he going to store it? There's simply no way to hide this much money. What he is doing now is ripping you off by making such an exorbitant demand, so why would he care that much? The imperial bodyguards have just gotten the news that the Wei clan indeed has their eyes on Zhongbua. Think about it. Wei Huaigu currently has the Ministry of Revenue in his grasp. If he manages to take down the 6 prefectures of Zhongbua, then this sum of money would be really used on military expenses. By the time the Wei clan has their own troops, and with the Empress Dowager, then the Shi clan would be at their mercy. Shi Hongxian suddenly turned his head to look at Shun Zichuan. "When you advised me to join forces with them back then, have you ever thought that this would happen today? Lanzhao, these people are all wolves and tigers. They are all insatiably greedy. The moment they have us in their hands, then you and I will never be able to get back on our feet again in this lifetime. Back then, when I advised you to join forces with them and kick out the Yao clan, you hesitated. The Yao clan was initially a good target for you to punish as a warning to others. You missed the chance, so the situation today is only to be expected. Shi Hongxian, if you don't kick them, then they will think of ways to boot you out." As if lamenting, Shun Zichuan said, "This situation is ever so fast changing. It's no longer the same as it was decades ago when everyone could still talk reason to one another. The 8 great clans is such that one clan rises when another falls. It's wearing down from within. You should have long swallowed up the others and declare yourself king." Shi Hongxuan's breathing quickened slightly. At this very moment, he regretted his inaction. His palms were drenched in sweat as he faced the flickering candlelight and said, "Lanzhao, when I get out this time, I'll heed your advice in all future plans. Since it has already come to this now, we have to think of a way first to get those 4 million. 4 million is still too much," Shun Zichuan said. "There's simply no way for that much money passing through Jueshi to escape Jiang Qingshan's eyes. Wait a little longer. I'm going to negotiate with Wei Huaigu." At this point, there was no other choice but to wait. Holding himself back, Shi Hongxian said, "It'd be best to hurry. The situation in the imperial court changes too fast. What's more, His Majesty is indecisive and doesn't have a mind on his own. If Shao II or Mu Ru were to coax and win him over, then it'll really be too late. It was inadvisable for Shun Zichuan to stay too long. As he put on his cloak, he asked, as if offhandedly, "Oh, right. You are in prison, then what about Qi Hualian? He's important too, so don't let anyone see him." Shi Hongxian was about to say something, but he changed his mind in a split second. He softened his voice as he said to Shun Zichuan, "Don't you worry. Qi Hualian will not starve to death. I've found someone to watch over him. It's just that the place is well concealed. I'll return him to you when I get out of here." It was under this dim light that Shun Zichuan partially turned his head back with a hint of a smile in the uplifted corners of his eyes. As he secured his cloak, he softly said, "Sure." A cold draft of wind slipped in through the crack between the door, causing the hairs on Shi Hongxian to stand on ends. He rubbed his arms, wanting to say a few words more to reassure him, but Shun Zichuan had already stridden out of the door. Chapter 79, Clues. Chapter 79, Clues. A cacophony of human voices hung over Kaling River. Shueshui sat cross-legged on the couch, cracking peanut shells and drinking wine. When Shao Qia entered, he hurriedly brushed his robe clean and got off the couch to pay his obeisances to Shao Qia. Shao Qia sat directly opposite Shueshui, and Chen Yang came over to pour wine. Shueshui placed his fingers at the sides of his legs and subconsciously rubbed them on his robe to wipe his hands. At the same time, he said, "That's enough, that's enough. Your lordship, too much of this wine is bad for your health." Holding the cup, Shao Qia said to him with a smile, "The eldest young master is quite meticulous. You must be diligent in keeping yourself in good health back in your residence, right?" "Only a little." Shueshui did not dare to take his seat without explicit permission. He was short and small-sized to begin with, and hunching over to Shao Qia in a bow made him look even more humble and lowly. Shao Qia cordially said, "Please sit. I'll still have the eldest young master's advice to seek." With his backside at the edge of the couch, Shueshui said, "I wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous as to offer advice." Shao Qia noted from Shueshui's appearance that the latter was clearly poles apart from Shueshuozhua. For Shueshuozhua to have to submit to such an elder brother, it was only natural for him to be unable to take it lying down. "It has been a while since I last saw His Excellency Yanqing." Shao Qia drank his wine. "I heard that he has been busy investigating cases with Minister Kong. It has been hard on him. It's only because the Secretariat Elder has promoted him that he's basking in glory now." Xiao Shiyu had long disliked Shueshuozhua. He had been making things difficult in all kinds of ways possible for this younger common-born brother of his, but a pity Shueshuozhua had always been like a cotton that cushioned all his damages and made all his efforts come to naught. He's the eldest young master's younger brother of common birth. According to customs, the one leading the way to join the ranks of officials in the imperial court should be the eldest young master. So why is it the other way round in your household? Shueshui accepted the wine, not daring to refuse it. He had already lost his sense of propriety after downing a few cups and was now feeling the earth spinning at his feet. At Shao Qia's question, he gripped the cup and said with a snort, "Well, he has the capability, no? Your lordship doesn't know it, but he has always been one since young to ingratiate himself with men in power for personal gains. He's a shrewd and deep one. There was heavy snow in the year he was born. When the time came for him to be named with the generation name Wenxiu, he was supposed to be named Gue, but a Taoist priest predicted that he would meet an extremely distinguished benefactor in his life, and calling him by this name would instead prove to be adverse. His birth mother, who was a resourceful woman, fawned upon our old master in all ways possible, pleading for him to be named with a Zhua instead. As in, cultivation of virtues and outstanding capabilities, 2 with the courtesy name 3 Yanqing. He sure has a charmed life, Shueishui's eyes dimmed when he spoke to this point. Xiao Qie comforted him. Eldest young master, why contend with him? You are the eldest lawful son of the Shui clan, you are way more esteemed than him. For his words hit right at Shueishui's sore point, making him feel stifled. Sure enough, Shueishui set down his cup and let out a long sigh. Your lordship, Shueishui was already drunk, and subsequently, he grew bolder. You are the second son of lawful birth of the Prince of Libei. There is no one of common birth to pose as a threat to you, so you are unaware of the specifics. People like us fear having a capable younger brother of common birth back at home. He's of lowly birth, yet he's a notch above me. Whether it's at home or out there, who doesn't praise him to the skies? What is this? How am I supposed to live with this? Look at the 8 great clans. Which of them has a descendant of common birth as the head of the clan? How is it that only our Shui clan has produced a Shueishuozhua? It was all because of his own selfish desires that he detested Shueishuozhua this much. But then, it was also precisely all because of Shueishuozhua that the Shui clan was able to make a comeback and secure its position among the 8 great clans. Just the heirs born to the principal wives in the Shui clan alone numbered in the hundreds, all of which took on the label of being a lawful son. Beneath them, there were also countless common sons born by the concubines. All the momentous family occasions such as marriages and funerals, monthly salaries and monetary rewards, expenses for living in separate residences, as well as taxes and costs for the country estates, came from the Shui clan's coffers and asset. Initially, old Master Shui planned to support Shueishui and let this eldest son of lawful birth of his take charge of the household as well as manage the family affairs. But the latter was either engrossed with cultivating the way of immortality or lavishing money on undeserving impostors and swindlers. It was just like what the Empress Dowager had said in the beginning. The descendants of the current Shui generation were all worthless good-for-nothings. Other than Shueishuozhua, who was of common birth, there was no one else worthy of notice. At present, Shueishuozhua was the Court of Judicial Review Assistant Minister. At the same time, he was also the head of the Shui clan. In these few years, he managed to put a stop to the downward decline of the Shui clan and secured its position among the noble clans. He had plenty of brothers at home who simply loafed around and contributed nothing, and he still had both paternal and maternal uncles up there who devised schemes all day to cheat the clan out of money. All of them lived off Shueishuozhua even as they spat at him, shamelessly seeking personal gains on the sly while cursing him for being of too lowly a birth. Xiao Qie was perfectly well aware of this. He had the same thinking as Shun Zichuan, and that was, if not for their uncertainty in where Shueishuozhua stood since he had all along been hiding behind the noble clans, then they, valuing talents, would have been willing to pull this person over to their side. The Quanqing silk incident was the key. It obscured Shen Zichuan's vision of Shueishuozhua, turning him into a person they must guard against. A man who was so astute and shrewd to the extent that he had already planted hundreds of thousands of threads of puppet strings as a precaution for future planning long before everything happened was no doubt someone who would not easily put himself at the disposal of another. When Xiao Qie, who was stroking his wine cup, thought to this point, he said, "As long as you are human, there will be times you will be down on your luck. There's no need for the eldest young master to be too anxious over this. He seems to me to be doing a pretty good job of attending to official duties at the Secretariat Elder and Minister Kong's side. And he typically doesn't go drinking or fool around with the other. He's a decent person who knows his place." Shueishui immediately got all worked up. His wine-induced hiccups persisted, and he covered his nose and mouth for a moment to compose himself before he impatiently said, "That's all just an act. Your lordship, you know of the twin flowers on Donglong Street, right? That's Ohua Pavilion and Shangyun Villa. A few years back, Shueishuozhua bought a batch of people from Shangyun Villa and hid them in the residence to groom." Xiao Qie suddenly smelled something fishy when he heard Shangyun Villa mentioned. His gaze sharpened as he repeated in a lowered voice, He bought people from Shangyun Villa? He did. Xiao Shui extended his fingers. He bought over 10 boys and girls, all from Shangyun Villa. After a moment of silence, Xiao Qi rose and said, Chunyang, keep eldest young master company. I think it's about time for Yao Wenyu to arrive. I'll go welcome him. The moment Xue Shui heard Yao Wenyu's name, he sat upright and repeatedly stated his agreement, not daring to pester or bother him further. As soon as Xiao Qie stepped out of the door, he shouted, Gu Jin. Gu Jin dropped down from above, got down on one knee and said, Second young master. Xiao Qie questioned, How did you not find out Shangyun sold over 10 people to the Shui clan when I told you to investigate Shangyun Villa earlier? Stunned, Gu Jin did not dare to raise his head and promptly said, I beseech young master to punish me. In the previous assassination case, Shangyun switched sides and provided falsified evidence of Xiao Qie accepting bribes. This matter was fishy. Their investigations to this date threw up no clues as to why Shangyun suddenly threw in her lot with the noble clans. Xue Xiuzhua was no womanizer or lecher, so exactly what secret was there in his buying of so many people from Shangyun Villa and taking them back to his residence to hide without so much a word of it all this while? Shen Zichuan was right. Even if Xue Xiuzhua had nothing to do with it, he had already appeared in every single incident ever since the Nanlin Hunting Grounds episode, perhaps even before the Nanlin Hunting Grounds incident. Of course, you should be punished. You have drunk quite the volume of wine ever since you came to the capital. Have you drunk yourself so drunk that even those eagle eyes of yours now have gone blind? No doubt you ought to be heavily punished for your incompetence and dereliction of duty. Go on your own to ask Qin Yang for a whipping. Gu Jin started sweating profusely. Xiao Qie handed Gu Jin's this job because he appreciated Gu Jin's meticulousness in his work, and Gu Jin was also the most skilled in conducting searches. As a former scout in the Libei armored cavalry, he had never made such an oversight. Xiao Qie was right. He had stayed in Kudu for so long that he even dared to take his assignments lightly. I give you 2 days to run another check. Get to the bottom of the number of people Shangyun sold to Xue Xiuzhua, their names, places of origins and ages, and even who their parents and distant relatives are. Xiao Qie strode past him and said in a frosty tone, Make another oversight, and you need not remain in this position any more. Gu Jin said nothing and kowtowed, then he rose to his feet and headed for Shangyun Villa. Chun Yang, having gotten freed up, came out and saw Xiao Qie's displeased expression. Thus he said, Master, Xue Shui is taking a rest now. Get someone to send him back tomorrow morning. Xiao Qie turned back to cast a glance inside. There is a set of rare books that are the only extant copies in the Plum Blossom residence. Give it to him when you send him away tomorrow morning. Chun Yang reminded him. Those are the Yao clan's collection of books. Should we inform young Master Yao? Yao, when you sold the Plum Blossom residence to me, that means he has already decided that he doesn't want them anymore. For most part of the year, he's out there traveling and living in foreign lands. He doesn't care for these. Xiao Qie had drunk a large amount of wine this night, yet he did not seem to be drunk. He tossed aside the handkerchief he used to wipe his hands. Besides, even if he returned to the capital, he's so elusive that it's hard to get hold or even catch a glimpse of him. He will definitely not attend a banquet like this. This is not an easy man to invite. Had it not been for the fact that young Master Yao didn't join the ranks of officials in the imperial court, I'm afraid Xue Xiuzhua would not even have the chance to shine today. Still looking displeased, Xiao Qie said, The turbulence of politics cannot be equated with the engagement of academia. Yao Wenyu may not necessarily do better than Xue Xiuzhua. These two are interesting, they are opposites in every way. When all is said and done, he's Secretariat Elder High's student. If Xue Xiuzhua is a traveler of the secular world, then young Master Yao is an immortal who transcends the mundane world. Chun Yang pondered it over. But looking at Secretariat Elder High, He cherishes young master Yao more. That's right. Hai Liangyi imparts his knowledge to Yao Wenyu without reservation. He did not hesitate to break his original beliefs and overlook the noble clan's prejudice to accept him as his student. This alone is enough to see how much he values him. Shuexiu's political achievements all these years are decent, yet Hai Liangyi still would not give him the dignity of being real teacher and pupil. What's more, Hai Liangyi does not have the slightest intent all these years to force Yao Wenyu to serve as an official. Yuanzhua. It was out of fatherly love that Hai Liangyi bestowed this courtesy name on Yao Wenyu back then. The closeness of a teacher and pupil whose relationship has already reached that extent is already something no one else can compete with. Shao Chia said, Yao Wenyu is a legitimate noble young master of a noble clan. Going by their way of thinking, Yao Wenyu is even more legitimate than those so-called legitimate descendants of the Pan, Fei, and Shui clans. The Yao clan is honorable and distinguished. Even the ladies of the Hua clan would find it hard to marry into the Yao clan in the past. Mountains of gold and silvers are, to him, not that much of a rarity as a bowl of wild herbs. Chen Yang had not seen Yao Wenyu that many times. When he bought the residence, he only had a brief encounter with him once. He remembered the latter as a scholar with a Zhaowen bag 5 on him, one who did not like to ride horses or sit in sedans, and instead kept a donkey. Is Ding Tao back? Shao Chia suddenly asked. Chen Yang said. He hasn't left yet. Let him play. Shao Chia strode into his own house and removed the brocade robe on him to replace with a set of ordinary clothes. At this point in the banquet, I should have already drunk with all those whom I ought to keep company. There's still some spare time before daybreak. I'll be back soon. Shun Zichuan stepped out of the alleyway, and Shidan followed after him from behind. Shidan did not dare to overtake Shun Zichuan and simply stood behind him as he waited for orders with his head lowered. Unexpectedly enough, Shun Zichuan was gentle. After turning around to look at him for some time, he said, You spoke well tonight. Shidan quickly bowed and replied, It is this lowly one's greatest aspiration to help your excellency with your frustrations and difficulties. But Shi Hongxian is suspicious by nature. It's not possible to trick him out of real money with only a few words. Shun Zichuan commented. Are you fully aware of his businesses across the various lands? Shidan said, Yes, I am. His accounts, whether big or small, would always be sent to his residence in Kudu every month. The 68 shopkeepers under him are all sons of domestic slaves. The parents, wives, and children of these people are all in his grasp. They were raised specifically for the purpose of managing his account. There is no way to hide any big or small goings-on in the storefronts from his eyes. He knows the score. And that's why there has never been a problem in his business empire all these years. Shun Zichuan then replied, If Shi Hongxian wants to withdraw these 4 million, he has to brief you to take the money from the money vault and hand you the key to open the vault door. I only want to ask, how will this money be transferred? Shidan silently made some mental notes and said after a while, There is, in fact, a huge risk when traveling on land. When escorting the money carts, cargoes are needed as a front to conceal the silvers. This is 4 million we are talking about. Without a business with a long history to serve as the cover, then Jiang Qingshan, the provincial administration commissioner of Jueshi, would be able to see through it right away. Moreover, Your Excellency, if we travel by land, then we must first bypass the 13 cities of Jueshi, as well as Diqing. These are all difficult checkpoints to pass. Most importantly, Shi Hongxian is right. There is no place to conceal this sum of money in Kudu at all. These were silver ingots and not paper bills. Even if one had vacant a quarter to keep them hidden, there was no knowing whether it would be able to accommodate all 4 millions of them. Then, there was also the headache of spending this money once he had the money in hand. Shun Zichuan pondered as he looked into the night, then said, This sum will not enter Kudu. Shi Dan did not dare to make a sound. Sure enough, Shen Zichuan continued after some time. The shipment is subjected to inspections by Jueshi whether it is transported by land or by sea. 4 million is too great of a sum. Even if we are thorough in our planning to keep a tight lid on this matter, and hide the shipment from the prying eyes, those who carry out the orders won't necessarily do a good job of the same. It's also pointless if the money can't be spent when it comes in. And so, this money won't reach Kudu. Trying to figure out what Shen Zichuan was thinking, Shi Dan tentatively probed. What Your Excellency means is to trick the money out of him, keep it there, and circulate it through trading. 1/2 of it will be handed to you to do just that, Shen Zichuan said. I'll come up with something for the other half. Be prepared. The Shi clan's business is extensive, and they can't do without a manager. When Shi Hongxian falls, you'll be the next in the line. Shi Dan quickly answered in agreement. Without another word more, Shen Zichuan climbed into the horse carriage and parted with Shi Dan for the time being. He still had to return to the imperial prison to review the files of all cold cases within the last 2 decades to infer some clues from them. He did not even have the time to go home and sleep. The horse carriage reached the imperial prison. Gu Qingqing, who was on night patrol, had long since opened the gates to wait for Qiao Tianya to drive in. When Shen Zichuan stepped off the carriage, Gu Qingqing came closer and whispered, "His lordship the Marquis is here." Shen Zichuan unclasped his outer cloak and stepped onto the front porch. He nodded towards Gu Qingqing, who then took his leave. Shen Zichuan pulled off his cloak and hanged it on his arm as he pushed open the door. Xiao Qie, having drunk wine, could not rid himself of the scent of wine even after he had a change of clothes. He slumped on Shen Zichuan's chair, with an opened book covering his face. When he heard the sound, he lifted the book but did not move. "Come sit here." Xiao Qie tossed the book onto the table. Shen Zichuan shut the door. He hung his outer cloak on the clothes rack and undid the clasps on his clothes in passing. Meeting Xiao Qie's gaze, he swung one of his legs over Xiao Qie's thighs, coming face to face with him before suddenly drawing even closer to him. Xiao Qie reached out to wrap his arms around Shen Zichuan's lower back, and their delicate lips met as they first kissed to their heart's content. Chapter 80. Betrothal Gift. Chapter 80. Betrothal Gift. This bout of sparring lasted a long time, pushing their satiety level to an even greater height until it became an insatiable desire for more after they had taken their first taste of the forbidden fruit. They were used to testing each other's limit in the dark. As their love grew increasingly deeper, a mere kiss was no longer able to fill their hunger. Desire, in its prime, laid bare at its rawest. Such a cloyingly sweet and clingy intimacy was a unique treat distinct to lovers, simply because it was a luxury to be in each other's company at all times. Since there were many eyes and ears inside the imperial prison, a kiss could only be considered a kind of tacit compensation between them. When it was time to end the kiss, Xiao Qie asked, "Where did you go?" As Shen Zichuan eased into his seated position, his thighs ground against the sides of Xiao Qie's legs. He took his time, slowing down his breathing. With a hint of veiled seduction in his half-lidded eyes, he replied, "Counting money." Xiao Qie squeezed him and said, "Did you get off on counting money?" Shen Zichuan let out a husky laugh. "Getting off from being squeezed by you." At Shen Zichuan's laugh, Xiao Qie felt restless. He grabbed Shen Zichuan's chin to hold it in place and said, "Keep going with this seduction of yours." Shen Zichuan's collarbone was peeking out from his undone collars, and the brutal bite marks from the last time had yet to fade. Paying them no mind, Shen Zichuan wetted his bitten lips and said, "I have to discuss something with you." Xiao Qie held him up and said, "What a coincidence. I have something to discuss with you too." Shen Zichuan was so scalded by Xiao Qie's gaze that his mouth felt dry and parched. He said, "The military supplies this year have to wait until April before they can be dispatched from Jueshi. I need to borrow and use the Northeast Provisions bridle path." Xiao Qie only had to think for a little to know what he was up to. The military supplies passing through the Northeast Provisions bridle path are personally escorted by the Libe armored cavalry themselves. There are no inspection checkpoints along the way. You can use it to transport the silvers, but it's all subjected to my elder brother's approval. If this money belongs to me, the hereditary prince naturally won't agree to it. But if this sum of money is yours, the hereditary prince will surely agree. Shen Zichuan raised his chin slightly. Here is my betrothal gift. Keep it for me, second young master. Only this much as a betrothal gift? Xiao Qia laughed as he freed up one hand to place the meal box on the table. A tough deal. Shen Zichuan sniffed and said, There's grilled fish. With that, he promptly forgot about the betrothal gift and pulled out chopsticks inside the box. It was in this way that Xiao Qia watched as he ate. In a blink of an eye, the bowl of rice was half gone, and there were only bones left of the fish when it returned to the plate. Xiao Qia actually did not like eating fish. He had lost his mother when he was young, and his household was not one to spoil its children, unlike how the 8 great clans pampered their offspring. Although he had a nanny and maidservants to wait upon him, he had to feed himself once he had learned how to hold the chopsticks. He was headstrong, and there were plenty of toys he loved to play with, so he did not care to waste his time picking out the fish bones. After getting choked on it enough times, he hardly ate it anymore. Xiao Qia looked at him and said, Does it smell good? Apparently, it's from a chef from Huzhou, who is even harder to hire than the imperial chefs from the palace. Shen Zichuan picked out the fish bones and fed Xiao Qia the meat with his chopstick. Xiao Qia tasted it and commented, Passable. Having eaten his fill, Shen Zichuan set down his bowl and chopsticks and said, What do you want to discuss with me? Xiao Qia handed him a handkerchief and said, The earlier investigation into Shangyun missed one piece of information. A few years earlier, Shuexiuzhua bought a batch of people from Shangyun Villa and kept them in his residence. I'm afraid even Shi Hongxian doesn't know about this matter. As expected, there was a shift in Shen Zichuan's expression. He said, He's not one to keep and raise prostitutes in private. This kind of thing is also almost unheard of in Ohua Pavilion. This action is too abnormal. That's right. It's abnormal. Xiao Qia leaned back against the back of the chair. I have a hunch that the reason Shangyun made a false charge against me lies here. He bought them a few years back. Shen Zichuan gradually furrowed his brows. If it was truly to get Shangyun under his control, then this move was planned much too early. Why would Shangyun fall under his control because of this? Some pawns, if planted too early, would not necessarily be able to stand up to the test of time. I feel that he's not making such a move just to get a handle against Shangyun. Xiao Qia sorted out his line of thought. Your plotting of the assassination is not something he would be able to predict in advance, so the subsequent post-developments would definitely be hard for him to guard against. Xiao Qia groped around these messy threads of clues, one at a time. His wolf-like intuition told him that this matter would not be that simple. Improvision. Shen Zichuan suddenly righted Xiao Qia's face and said, You are right. The puppet string connected to Shangyun was not specifically intended to be used for dealing with you. Shangyun's act of perjury was simply an opportunity he seized for his own purpose. The fact that he could simply throw out Shangyun to use shows that Shangyun is of little significance to him. There is another reason he bought those people, and Shangyun is merely a convenient pawn that incidentally came with this reason. What's more, she's a pawn he can't wait to discard. Then, the key to his purchase of those people is, Xiao Qia was on the same wavelength. Among the batch of people he bought. Shen Zichuan completed his sentence softly. Both men looked at each other, caught yet again in another puzzle of unknowns. Shangyun Villa was a brothel. What person could there be in a brothel who would be of great importance to Shuexiuzhua? He bought over 10 people to obscure the truth and throw everyone off scent so that no one can tell who exactly was his intended purchase. No doubt Shang Yun herself doesn't know the answer either. Xiao Qie said. I have to get Xue Shui to probe into this matter again. His status in the Xue residence would allow him free access to the residence. Xue Xiuzhou might be able to obstruct and deny entry to outsiders, but he definitely can't do that to Xue Shui. This piece of information was indeed important, but Shun Zichuan could not figure it out at present. He had maneuvered Shi Hongxian into action this time also because he had apprehensions about Xue Xiuzhua, who similarly had Shi Hongxian in his grasp. Instead of becoming more distinct and decipherable with the passage of time, this person had, on the contrary, became increasingly obscure and unreadable. There's still time. Shun Zichuan seemed to be thinking aloud to himself. We will be thrown off kilter the moment we get overly anxious, and that could easily put us in a disadvantageous position. Since he has not made his move, then it means it's not time yet, and this is an opportunity we can exploit. At this time, we are the ones hiding in the dark, while he's out there in the open. We will definitely learn some crucial information if we follow the clues. Shi Hongxian has always been on friendly terms with Xue Xiuzhua all these years. Even if he's unaware of Xue Xiuzhua's purchases of those prostitutes, there will still be something he knows that others don't. I'll probe him again later. After saying so much, you still haven't let this second young master in on the details. Xiao Qie did not let him get off him. How much silver did you swindle from him? Shun Zichuan snapped out of his thoughts and pursed his lips slightly. He raised 4 fingers, just like he had done so before. Xiao Qie immediately grasped those fingertips tight without demur. Sweet. Worth it. Put it down as your betrothal gift, quick. Shun Zichuan said, you should act with a little more reserve instead of jumping at it. 4 million is too little still. Xiao Qie said, it's too generous. A starting price at 4 million? For someone who can make this much money as you do, this second young master will take whatever price you offer. Amused by him, Shun Zichuan said, I told him that Wei Huaigu wanted 4 million silvers. There was not the slightest bit of hesitation or reluctance on his part at all, which shows that 4 million is simply a drop in the ocean to the Shi clan. Seeing how happy he was tonight, Xiao Qie made no further mention of Xue Xiuzhua's matter. He jerked his legs to jolt him and said, only the Shi clan themselves know precisely how much money the Shi clan has. All the others can only see are the salterns and copper mines they operate. The extent of their enterprise isn't just limited to the whole empire, but also stretches as far as the foreign lands. The common rich young masters play by hitting the brothels and the gambling dens, but Shi Hongxuan's idea of fun is to run brothels and gambling dens. That broker house on Donglong Street is also his shop, and its internal dealings implicate plenty of imperial court bigwigs, all of whom have fields and businesses at stake in his hands, so they have no choice but to give him face. This time, it's 4 million, but how much will it be the next time? The Northeast Provisions bridle path is only open twice every year. How to hide and spend that much silver are all issues you have to think through very carefully. No one has ever broken through the Shi clan's money vault, so putting the money inside is the most secure. No matter how that money is spent now, it'd be hard to escape the eyes of the imperial court. The accounts of your 20,000-strong imperial army already have to be checked and triple-checked in successive order. If this sum of money is not spent and disposed of perfectly, then the second young master would have to be detained in jail to await trial. His curiosity piqued, Xiao Qie said, spending money, huh? What else is there other than frittering it away by playing and having fun? Or are you preparing to save it for Zhongbua? Nowhere in mind for the money to go to for the time being. Seeing that it was almost time, Shun Zichuan fastened his cloak with one hand. The second young master doesn't handle household affairs, so how would you know how valuable the daily staples like tea, rice, oil, and salt are? There will be plenty of uses for the money in the future, so there's no harm in keeping it on hand, even if we can't spend it all for the time being. It's better to be prepared for all contingencies. Both of them were clearly set on defrauding Shi Hongxian by convening in this way to discuss the latter's household finances and assets with such serious expressions. Xiao Qie still had to return to Kaling River, and after saying a few words, he had to leave. He had rushed over as soon as he had the free time to see Shen Zichuan, and now, having fed the latter, he could not afford to sit and linger any longer. As Xiao Qie turned over to mount his horse, he recalled something else and pulled the reins to say, "The inspection will happen these 2 days. The Grand Secretariat has already proposed a candidate for the Provincial Administration Commissioner for the 6 prefectures of Zhongbua. That Jiang Qingshan of Jueshi had hurried over to report to Kudu on imperial orders. My guess is that it's likely him. I've long heard of his name and reputation. I remembered how he displayed courage and foresight when he handled the aid relief efforts for the 13 cities of Jueshi 6 years ago." At this point, Shen Zichuan recalled that this person was also on good terms with Shuexiuzhua and could not help but hesitate. Although his personal friendship with Shuexiuzhua is pretty good, it does not necessarily mean that he's in Shuexiuzhua's camp. When he enters the capital, you can meet him to try to get a grasp on him. He isn't a descendant of a noble clan, and he doesn't rely on the noble clans for backing. You can decide for yourself whether or not we can use him when the time comes. Seeing Shen Zichuan standing on the steps, Xiao Qie raised a hand to beckon to him. Shen Zichuan was all ears to hear him out. He did not expect Xiao Qie to simply say nothing and merely caressed a handful of his hair with his palm. With a lift of its hooves, Lang Tao Shui Jin broke into a gallop. Gu Qingqing pushed the gates open, and Xiao Qie rode away into the night. Chapter 81, Shadows. Chapter 81. Shadows. The food in the prison was unclean, and so Shi Hongxian suffered a stomach upset. His constitution was already weakened during the epidemic, and now he was in even more of a misery. He was not in a good state mentally, so he often fell into a lethargic sleep. Furthermore, it was dark all around each time he woke up, and gradually, he lost track of time. Without any window to ventilate the room, this narrow and cramped room smelled foul and stale, with a damp, musty smell thrown in for effect. There was no way an ordinary man would be able to endure it. Shi Hongxian was badly ill, yet he was unable to turn and move his body as freely as he would have wanted. All he could do was to lay paralyzed on the straw mat and let his consciousness drift along with the dampness and cold. As usual, the warden moved the flap open and stuffed the rice inside, but he did not hear any movements from Shi Hongxian today. He looked in through the hole, but all he could see was Shi Hongxuan's drooping arm. The warden was afraid that Shi Hongxian had died, thus he opened the door and took the lamp to shake it in front of Shi Hongxuan's face. Shi Hongxian struggled to open his eyes. With dry lips and a parched mouth, he said, Sir, please spare me some water." The warden flipped his hand over and poured a bowl of water onto Shi Hongxuan's face. Shi Hongxian exerted himself to open his mouth to receive the water, hardly bothering with his dampened collars. He drank the water and pulled himself together to say, "Thank you, thank you." The warden threw the bowl away, then grabbed the oil lamp and made to leave. With an unexpected burst of strength, Shi Hongxian suddenly grabbed hold of the warden's clothes. He forced out a smile on his chubby face and said, "Buddy, tell me. This cough. This place is not the prison at all, am I right?" The warden swatted off Shi Hongxuan's hand. But Shi Hongxian burst out laughing in a hoarse voice instead, gasping violently as he lay on the straw mat. He pulled at the front of his soaked clothes and moved his eye to stare at the pitch-dark roof. He said, "This place isn't the prison. I should have thought of it a long time ago. It has already been a few days. Even if Kong Chiu doesn't interrogate me, there should be officials from the Ministry of Justice coming over to make their rounds for a check. Too quiet. It's too quiet here," Shi Hongxian said, then swiftly fixed his eyes on the warden in a stare. "I've done some calculations. You come to deliver food every day at precisely the same time, and you even push and put the tray into exactly the same position. Buddy, the average warden isn't this rigid. It has already been a few days, and nobody came to exchange shifts with you in guarding the prison door. You wouldn't even accept my money, and even these sleeves of yours are so clean and tidy without so much a speck of grease and dust. You are well built and tall, discreet and reticent. You are an imperial bodyguard, right? The warden's face was expressionless as he carried the oil lamp and walked away to close the door. Shi Hongxian listened to the sound of metal chains winding around it, then pounded his fists hard on the straw mat under him. Shen Zichuan! Shen Zichuan! Shi Hongxian pounded until his knuckles reddened. He abruptly let loose a shout at the top of his voice, plotting against me. To think you'd scheme against me. You. Tell him to come. There was no response from the darkness. Shi Hongxian dug his fingers into the straw mat. His consciousness was in a muddle as he spat hatefully. He wants money, doesn't he? Call him over. As long as he let me out, as long as he let me out. He forcefully swallowed his saliva, then suddenly pulled at his hair and gasped, I'll give him money! I can't fucking stand this anymore. The warden sat down outside with the oil lamp next to him and popped the broad beans into his mouth to down with his wine. With the metal door behind him blocking off Shi Hongxian, all that could be heard from within was the sound of faint sobs and whimpers, much like the wind in the dead of the night. Shi Hongxian's eyes had turned cloudy. He did not dare to sleep again out of fear that he would not wake up if he fell asleep. By the time Shen Zichuan came again, he had already calmed down. Shen Zichuan remained on his feet as he sized up Shi Hongxian. Shi Hongxian once had a narrow escape from the jaws of death when he headed out to sea. Ever since he fought his way back from certain death, he had never cut such a sorry sight. He was different from the other descendants of the noble clans. He was not afraid of being caught in desperate situations, nor was he afraid of looking wretched. He let Shen Zichuan look as he strained his dry and hoarse throat to let out an unwarranted laugh for a moment before he said, Lanzhao, you have guts. 4,000,000. I nearly met my end being fleeced by you. This hadn't been an easy place to find. It mustn't be too conspicuous, and it can't be too far away. Shen Zichuan let out a soft sigh. I sure wasn't expecting you to be this meticulous and discerning in your observations. Shi Hongxian shook his arm and said, Men die for money, while birds die for food. Brother, I'm more than willing to give you this sum of money. But you can't simply want my life for just this bit of money. His tone was a little weak and unsteady, but hunger and illness were not able to deprive him of the ability to adapt to his circumstances. He continued, Lanzhao, I could have still pretended to be in the dark. I'm the only one who knows where the Shi clan's keys are. I could have run around in circles with you and extracted myself out of here through trickery. But see, I didn't do so. I still hold this bit of brotherhood to heart. Lanzhao, we joined forces to kill Shi Guan and Ji Lei. You are now the target of envy in the Imperial bodyguards. If you screw me to death now, you will lose the Shi clan's support. The more you climb your way up in the Imperial bodyguards, the narrower the path you have to navigate. You already know what it feels like to be stuck in a situation so difficult that you can hardly move a step forward, don't you? Which of those old men with hereditary positions in noble clans will be willing to submit to you? You are an ambitious one. Isn't it also on my account that Han Qing could tolerate you? If you kill me, you will become the target of all. Shen Zichuan squatted down, holding a handkerchief between his fingers as he looked at Shi Hongxian and sought his advice with a serious expression. Then, in your opinion, what should I do? Shi Hongxian had seen this expression of Shen Zichuan countless times. He knew that there was no doubt Shen Zichuan's intent to kill had been ignited. So he dripped with cold sweat as he traded gazes with Shen Zichuan for a moment before he replied, We haven't reached the point where we fall out with one another. Shen Zichuan, I lost this time, I concede. It's not a disgrace at all to suffer a business defeat. There's no need for me to create a scene and fall out with you over this bit of trivial matter. I fear you. This is the truth. But it's also precisely because of this fear that I want to continue to work with you. Think about it. If you kill me, you will only have 4 million. But if you have me in your grasp, then you'll have the Shi clan's mountains of gold and silver. I concede defeat. So why get your hands stained with this bit of blood? We still have all the days ahead of us to lord it over Kudu. That's a fair point, Shen Zichuan said. But it's a tad too easy to dismiss me with just the words concede defeat, isn't it? I heard that the second young master has 68 keys. So how about we split them 40-60? It'd also set my mind at ease. Shi Hongxian slowly propped himself up. The expression in his eyes as he looked at Shen Zichuan was ferocious as he said, I can give you the keys. But once you take the keys, you can't ask for Qi Hualien again. How about it? Are you willing? Shen Zichuan slowly raised his fingers before putting it down again, as if he was bored stiff. He said, You think Qi Hualien is worth this sum? Naturally, I want the keys. Since he's worth nothing, then it's pointless to retain him. I'm killing him then. Shen Zichuan suddenly began to laugh. He said, You think I don't know where he is? We are already at this point and you still want to test me. You're the one who's testing me. Shi Hongxian crawled slowly towards Shen Zichuan, finally revealing a savage expression. I understand you. Lanzhao, the same trick is useless if you play it one time too many. You are accustomed to deceive others with words. The more you pretend not to give a hoot about someone at this moment, the more important they are to you. You tricked me once that day in the courtyard, and now you still want to use the same trick on me. I, Shi Hongxian, may not be a person of outstanding smarts, but I'm also not dumb to that extent. You don't know where he is. If you know, then you'd have killed me after getting the money. So how did it go, Shen Zichuan? Am I correct in saying that you still couldn't find him despite searching all over Kudu? Shen Zichuan slightly tightened his grip on his handkerchief. Shi Hongxian smoothed aside his messy hair and said, As much as you may be eloquent, you've forgotten one thing, and that is, your meticulous and careful concealment of him is already enough to make me suspicious. Even if I believe you a little, I still have to be on guard against you. The thing to fear when having dealings with you is that you'd turn around and give me a stab. Shen Zichuan's eyes were emotionless as he looked at Shi Hongxian and said, Then, what do you want? I want to get out of here. Shi Hongxian pointed at the door. I want to walk out of here unscathed. If I can't get out tonight, then Qi Hualien's corpse will be left on your doorstep tomorrow morning. Do you believe me? You can try me. Shi Dan, that traitorous bastard who betrayed his master for wealth, must have told you that all the men under my command are children of the domestic slaves in our clan. My safety concerns the safety of hundreds of people. Even if I can't get out, I still have plenty of ways at my disposal to kill off Qi Hualien. You're lying. Shen Zichuan suddenly got up, and that dreary, ruthless emotion within him burst forth in this filthy room. He took a few steps back, taking advantage of the dimness to blur that face of his into some kind of behemoth lurking in the dark. This place is isolated from outsiders. How are you passing on the message to others? Tricking me even when death is near at hand, and you still tell me to try you? Shen Zichuan said with a shadow of a smile in a frosty tone, Sure then. Let's us try. I'll send you on your way out. If I could be on guard against you in advance, then why couldn't I take precautions against you prior? Shi Hongxian was drenched in cold sweat on seeing the situation deteriorate. He promptly raised his voice. I've long told the guards on watch that I'll head down once every half a month. If I don't, then they will strike. You asked me the last time if I dare to believe your words. Shen Zichuan, this time I'm asking you, do you dare to believe the same? Shen Zichuan did not make a sound. Shi Hongxian then slowed his tone, as if soothing him. Since you can buy over Shi Dan, then you must have already known that I am the only one who knows where Qi Hualien is. I've long understood that no one in this world can be trusted, so I have left countless escape routes in place for myself. Lanzhou, why must we both be on the losing end? It doesn't benefit either of us to infuriate each other. Aren't you making all these moves for the sake of gains? This deal is so unprofitable, no doubt you won't do it. Whatever it is that you're lacking, I have it all, and I'll give it to you. You only need to lend me this guts and wisdom of yours, and we can thrive and flourish in Kudu. Look at that Li Jianheng. He's a good emperor, one that's few and far between. He signifies an even faster path to success for men like you and me. This is a meteoric rise we're talking about, Lanzhou. Do you think Shao II would be able to accept you if you kill me and offend the noble clans? How long can the Shao clan's prestigious reputation of being infallible and undefeated in battles continue on for? Shao Fengshu is already old. If Shao Jiming were to die too, then what is Shao II alone good for? They are doomed to fail and fall. Shi Hongxian seemed to lament, and at the same time encourage. Lanzhou, you and I both have had a hard time being under the control of others, and now you still want to choose to submit to Shao II and be at his beck and call? The only things in this world that can never abandon you are power and money. Join forces with me, and I'll give you money. You just need to help me keep the Shi clan's reputation intact, and we can bring our business deal up a level. When that time comes, it'd be hard for anyone jockeying for power to sway you and me from our positions. You previously wanted me to swallow up the other clans and proclaim myself king. So why are you now bound by constraints and limits yourself? Then, there's the 6 prefectures of Zhongbua. Don't you want to rebuild Zhongbua to avenge yourself for the humiliation you suffered in the past? Shen Wei's name can never be fully cleared, but you can use money to smash the gates to Zhongbua open. They are currently so poor that they even exchange children for food one in their dire straits. You'll be like a deity who has descended from heaven. By that time, who would still dare to refuse to yield to you? Who would still dare to curse you? These are all what money can give you. Can the Empress Dowager do the same? Can Shao II do the same? Lanzhou, what are you still hesitating for? We can still continue to join forces and climb our way up to the top just like before. Shen Zichuan was moved by his words. He no longer seemed to be brimming with murderous intent, and his tone had also softened some as he said, "If you had been this candid way earlier, we would not have to go as far as to face off each other in a confrontation, isn't it? You're right. It's by joining forces that you and I can save ourselves a lot of troubles. I'm a merchant. To a businessman, profit comes first. If there isn't that much of a benefit to our collaboration, then why would I waste my breath like this?" Shi Hongxuan's back itched. The part that had been wounded by the collapse the last time was scabbing over, and it itched so much these days that it hurt. He took a little breather, then continued, "Then there's no time to lose. Let me out now. Once I'm out, we can sit down for a proper discussion." Shi Hongxian had more than 10 martial arts experts from the martial fraternity in the Shi residence in Kudu. He had spent a large sum of money to hire them to intimidate Shen Zichuan the last time, and he had always kept them in his residence. In truth, he was already burning with anxiety, because he could not figure out what Shen Zichuan was thinking. As such, he had also started to harbor the intent to kill, determined as he was to burn his bridges and fight to the end. No matter what, he had to get out of here first. It was only by getting out that there would be a variable he could exploit to turn things around. He wanted to kill Shen Zichuan so much that he could not even wait for tomorrow, much less engage in diplomacy with him. Being able to deal with each other for a long time often meant that both parties were evenly matched. They had the room to be able to sit down and trade barbs. Shi Hongxian felt that the present him and Shen Zichuan had already lost this balance. It was as if he had fallen into a certain kind of pouch that Shen Zichuan had bound to hold him in check as Shen Zichuan climbed his way up the official ranks, thereby rendering him incapable of controlling and swaying the development of the situation like he could at the outset. Shi Hongxian still did not know where the problem lay, but based on his businessman's instinct, he had already discovered his current plight, in which he was turning around in circles like a man under a spell. Too had everything to do with Shen Zichuan. They had been working together in cahoots to this date, but other than killing Shi Guan to get his hands on the Shi clan's keys, the sweetness of every benefit Shi Hongxian has had a taste of in all that had happened afterwards had been fleeting. Only Shen Zichuan had truly scaled to greater heights with power firmly in hand. Shi Hongxian was sure that he had been made a fool of, but he still had a look of sincerity on his face. It was as if he admired Shen Zichuan to the point he worshipped the ground Shen Zichuan walked on, while at the same time, feared him to the point he dared not take any action. Qiao Tianya pushed the door crack open and cast the light from the oil lamp inside. Shen Zichuan's exposed wrists were clean. With his side bathed in the light from the lamp, he looked no different from the way he appeared in the daytime as he said politely, "After you, please." Shi Hongxian inwardly breathed a sigh of relief.